July 30th, 2021 was the date that Texas officially accepted an invitation to join the SEC. That was 1,226 days ago. On July 1st, 2024, it became official. Texas joined the SEC. That was 159 days ago. Now, on December 7th, 2024, the Texas Longhorns will play for the SEC title at the end of its first season in the conference. What a ride it's been. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the only Texas football pregame show that you need. This is the Texas Sports Unfiltered pregame show, and we are live from Dare Biergarten in downtown Atlanta, less than 1 mile away from Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the site of today's SEC championship game between the number 2 Texas Longhorns and the 5th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Alongside Zay Collier, I am BK Brad Kellner. We are with you for the next 2 hours, getting you set for kickoff for the SEC championship game. Chip Brown's going to join us a little bit later. Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered will stop by as well. We are locked and we are loaded. And Zay, it is game day. The Longhorns playing for a championship at the end of its first season in the SEC. I'll tell you what, when the announcement came down 3 years ago that Texas was going to join the SEC, I didn't think the Horns were ready. So much has changed between 2021 and where we are at the end of 2024. Now the Longhorns favored in the SEC title game, a chance to win the best conference in college football in their first year.
Charlie Strong years, rough. Tom Herman years, rough. To be here right now, downtown Atlanta, playing for an SEC championship in year one, absolutely incredible job by Steve Sarkisian and his coaching staff. And the culture has done a complete 180. They've bought into how you have to build a roster in the SEC when it comes to just the mass and the size and the physicality, the speed. You didn't get that with those Strong and Herman teams. And Steve Sarkisian, from his background working with Nick Saban, being in the SEC in Alabama, he knew exactly what he needed to build when he got the Texas job, and he's done that and then some. So Texas fans, they're rolling in here at their Biergarten right now, and everybody's hyped and excited, and it's because of this Texas team that has a big chance to do something very special today in year one in the SEC.
And a chance not only to win the SEC title, but a chance to avenge the only loss during the regular season, right? It almost feels fitting that it's Texas and Georgia in this matchup today. It's like the final boss that you've got to go up against. Made the comparison to the Master Hand and Super Smash Bros. Or like fighting Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Georgia's been the class of college football for the last few seasons. They've won 2 of the last 3 national championships, and it feels fitting that this is who Texas has to go up against. Look, these 2 teams met in Austin back in October. Things did not go well for Texas. The Longhorns got blown out of that game, and they got dominated up front. It was 23-0 at halftime. 30-15 was the final score. Look, Zay, I think there's enough motivation. You're playing for a conference championship. You're playing for a first-round bye in the college football playoff. All of that stuff should have been enough for Texas to be amped up and ready to go today. But the fact that they get to go up against the one team that got him during the regular year, I think that makes it even sweeter. And I think revenge is going to be on the mind of a lot of the guys wearing those icy white uniforms today.
For sure. And I'm glad they're wearing the icy whites. They selected to pick those, even though they're the home team. And that road warrior mindset, they've been living off that all year long. You go into Ann Arbor, you wax Michigan, you go into places like Arkansas and Kyle Field at A&M, and you wax both of those teams. They want to be, I wouldn't say the underdog, but they want to be the villain today against Georgia, which it's basically going to be a home game for them. But, I heard some, big time credible guys on different networks say it's going to be a home game for Georgia. I see a lot of burnt orange here. We've been here for, 48 hours or so. I've seen a lot of burnt orange here in the Peach State. And hey, man, it's going to be rocking at the Benz today. I'm super excited.
Yeah, and I'm not nervous that this game is in Atlanta, right? I mean, this is the furthest thing from a neutral site game you could get. And Texas is technically the home team in this game, right? The Longhorns finished with the better SEC record than Georgia. So they're the home team in this matchup. It's not going to feel that way, but Texas has won 11 straight true road games. So this won't affect that streak because, once again, it's technically a neutral site game, but the Longhorns haven't been scared to go into those atmospheres that you're talking about. And what do they say? Turnabout is fair play. Georgia came into Texas, beat the Longhorns. Now Texas has the opportunity to go in the state of Georgia and beat the Bulldogs feels fitting that this game is being played here today.
Yeah, and you know me, I'm all about my conspiracy theories and stuff. We're in Georgia. We're, 80 miles from Athens or so. Not allowing Bevo to come to the Benz. I ain't about that, man. That should be another bulletin board material thing. Like, come on. You know, I get it, Bevo. He's a big guy. He takes up a lot of space. But to say that there's not enough room for him, I think that was an inside job from somebody that has Georgia ties, that works at the biz, this, that, and the third, and they prevented Bevo from coming up here to the ATL. So, yeah, you know, there's just add a little bit more salt on the wound. But, yeah, that game, October 19th, an absolute embarrassment for Texas. And for them to get another chance at the team that's been dominating the SEC for the last few years, you're right, BK. It's definitely fitting.
Hey, just because Uga was too scared to come to Austin.
Yeah, a little scary bulldog, man. That's a little cute Uga.
Yeah, doesn't mean Bevo can't come to Atlanta. What's the deal? There's going to be so many random people on the sideline for this game. You could kick some of them off and give Bevo a place to chill. He doesn't do much. He's not moving around a lot. He just sits there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's all he does. Can't have him there? Come on.
Yeah, it's Bush League, but it's okay. It's okay.
Everyone's worried about what happened in New Orleans at that 2019 Sugar Bowl.
See, that's Georgia's fault.
Yep.
Like, Uga, he looked like he was trying to get about something. So Bevo said, "No, man, I don't play that. I don't play that." Bevo had to show him up. Obviously, no one really got hurt there. But, yeah, there's a little conspiracy theory in there why Bevo's not here. But it's okay. Let's leave it on the field.
Hey. Set the tone in that Sugar Bowl, though, didn't it?
It did.
That told everybody what was about to go down on the field in that matchup. Texas looking for something closer to that than what happened back on October 19th at DKR. Special thanks to our title sponsors for our pre- and post-game shows on Texas Sports Unfiltered. Shout out to Covert Bee Cave. Shout out to 34 Wine and Spirits as well. If you're in the Atlanta area, come by and see us. We also just got a couple of tickets to today's game. So if you are a Texas fan, we're not giving them to any Georgia fans, all right? I've seen too many grown-ass men barking like dogs around this city over the last couple of days. We're not having that. I don't want to sit next to any of those people, all right? So if you're a Texas fan and you don't have tickets to today's game, come by and see us at their Biergarten. We're not going to give these away on YouTube or on the app. You have to come by and say hello, and we've got some tickets to give away, and you'll get to sit next to Zay and myself. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm turning up.
But we're going to be turned up today.
Yeah, we're going to be turned up, man. Yeah. I know we're in the home of Ludacris. I'll be ready to throw some bows if these Georgia folks try to get crazy.
You talking about throwing bows? I brought about 40 water bottles just in case. Just in case, because if the call is shit, you must acquit, all right? So if there's another bad call today in favor of Georgia, I'm going to do my part and make sure that stuff's thrown on the field.
You're going to be on your own because I ain't getting dragged out the stadium, man. Them tickets too good. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But, you know, I might have to sit down and, close my eyes and throw one real quick if things get a little restless out there. But hopefully the refs are up to par, unlike they were on October 19th, the last time these two teams played.
Yeah, that was quite a crazy scene in Austin. And I saw that Texas announced that they had concluded its investigation into the water bottle throwing incident in that first matchup. Nobody got punished.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the right thing.
It's the right thing to do. The call's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you expect? Make better calls. You're talking to a guy that's refereed in a sport before. I expect to get hassled if I'm bad. It should tune up and tighten up your game. And the fact that these refs had to get that, it made them better man, BK. You know what I'm saying? Those refs, they needed that. That humbles you. That makes you want to get better. And I'm glad they changed the call then, but it shouldn't even have got to that point if the right call was made originally.
Fans shouldn't have to do the jobs of the officials.
Sure.
That's what happened in that first game, and hopefully that doesn't happen again because that was a weird moment for sure. But special thanks to our title sponsors. Also some love to our travel partners who are allowing us to be here in the ATL, McCall Custom Homes, POC Premier Lodge, and Real Truck. We'll tell you about them over the course of today's show, but obviously a lot to get into over the next couple of hours, talking all things Texas and Georgia. And kind of big picture here, Zay, before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of this matchup itself, the opportunity for Texas today to put a lot of narratives to bed, right? Narratives that have gone on for a long time, not just 2024 storylines, but for years Texas fans heard that they couldn't compete in the SEC. Oh, congrats, you're winning games in the Big 12. Well, that's cool. There's no TCU, there's no Baylor, there's no Kansas in this league. It's just a little bit different. Texas in my mind, has put a lot of those narratives to bed by the fact that they are in this game. But you beat Georgia, you win the SEC, you can put that stuff away. And also just focusing on this year's team, Texas hadn't beaten anybody. Texas hasn't beaten anybody. Texas hasn't beaten anybody. I mean, everybody and their mother has heard that 1,000 times. You get the opportunity to beat a top 5 team basically in their own house. We know what's at stake with the college football playoff. We know you get a trophy if you win this game tonight. But the chance to shut so many people up, I don't know how much that matters to the guys in that locker room. I can tell you it matters to me, and it matters to Longhorn fans everywhere.
Steve Sarkisian would tell you it doesn't matter, but I think it does. I think that's just coach speak. And look, the goalpost moves for the Texas Longhorns, it seems like, because all we heard last week before the A&M game when the national media included some of our guys at SEC Unfiltered, Keenan Womack will include him too, but we're picking the Aggies to come away with the victory. And a lot of people are saying, oh, this is their first true road test. They haven't really been anywhere. Kyle Field's a different place to play. Nick Saban saying that, just a whole bunch of different people. And then what do? They don't allow an offensive touchdown from the Aggies.
Yep.
Only that pick 6 from Quinn Ewers was the only points that Texas A&M got. So now you're still hearing those things, and it should piss those guys off. It pisses me off too. But look, all these guys, there's so much bulletin board material. There's so many motivation factors into this game. That's what's going to be exciting, because once all the jitters go away, first 2 drives and stuff, it just gets down to real SEC football. And that's what everybody's going to watch. And that's what you and I and Texas Sports Unfiltered came to see.
Absolutely. Excited for this one. 4 o'clock Eastern time kickoff, 3 o'clock back home. Texas now a 3-point favorite. Some late money has been coming in on the bed last night, now up to 3. So some confidence in Texas, even though
Texas team is. And, there's a lot at stake today with the offensive line. Is Kelvin Banks going to play? That's the biggest question, because you would like to have your All-American left tackle there, even though, like I've been saying all week long, I think Trevor Gooseby could step up to the plate. I know that's a lot to say for a redshirt freshman. This guy was a damn 3-star coming in from Melissa, Texas. Chip had to tell me where it was earlier in the week, you know what I'm saying? Because only Melissas that I know are back of the ATX, some cold Melissas out there.
Yep.
But Melissa, Texas, didn't know anything about it. The dude came in, biggest game of his life, one of the biggest games in the last 10 years in Texas football, and delivered for an All-American. So I wouldn't be so quick to push Kelvin Banks back into that starting lineup, because for a fact this team has way more meaningful games than winning the SEC championship. Even though you want to win this game, if they lose this, it's not completely the end of the world. So if Kelvin Banks has to sit out before the college football playoff, I'm good with that decision for Steve Sarkisian. So I don't know why the line has moved up a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think the Horns are the better football team. I think they were completely blindsided that first time around, whether it was the oblique injury for Quinn Ewers, just a great game plan Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann had on the defensive end to force 10 tackles for loss and 7 sacks and 4 turnovers. I do not think you're going to get that today, and I think that's why Texas is going to come through.
I'm going to quote REO Speedwagon here. Heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend that Kelvin Banks would have to be dead to not start today's game.
Okay.
So Kelvin Banks listed as questionable on all 3 injury reports that came out this week leading up to this game. I get what you're saying, and I think there are a lot of Texas fans who agree with you, right? Like, you're in the playoff either way. You don't need this game. You probably need Kelvin Banks to win a national championship. This is a top 10 pick in next year's NFL draft that we're talking about. Like, let him stay off his ankle for another couple of weeks and rely on Trevor Gooseby, who did so well in College Station last weekend. But Kelvin Banks has been through a lot. He's given a lot to the University of Texas. And look, obviously the doctors have to clear him. If the doctors say no, then Kelvin Banks won't play. Right. But if this is a decision that is up to Kelvin Banks, he at least is going to start this game this afternoon.
And, hey, kudos to him. He probably did all the work to get himself ready enough. Who knows if he'll be wearing that Quinn Ewers type ankle brace that he had, the revolutionary ankle brace that allowed Quinn Ewers to look really good with his mobility this past Saturday at Kyle Field. So, hey, yeah, you got to trust somebody like Kelvin Banks, man. He's one of your leaders. I know that he's been waiting for this moment, and he wants to prove that last time around when Jalen Walker and McCall Williams were going crazy and making things happen, he wants to prove that that was a fluke, that I am way better than that. I'm going to show these guys up and help get the Longhorns a dub today.
Yep, and Pete Thamel of ESPN has reported this morning that Kelvin Banks is a game-time decision. So no surprise there. That's kind of what Steve Sarkisian has talked about all week long. We will see what happens when the game actually gets here. But just to add some stats to Trevor Gooseby in his conversation, 30 pass rush reps last week against Texas A&M, did not allow a single sack, did not allow a single pressure. He also was graded out by PFF with an 87.1 pass block grade. That was the best of any Texas offensive lineman. That was the second best by any SEC offensive lineman last week. So not only was he O-line during rivalry week.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, this whole coaching staff, and I'm giving love to Kyle Flood here, to have that guy ready and just locked in. It's so difficult when you're coming off the bench and you don't think any way you're going to get in this ball game. And then Kelvin Banks goes down. For Gooseby to not be rattled and just come in, and you threw the stats out there, dominate.
Yeah.
A really good front four for Texas A&M that mirrors a lot what Georgia does. I mean, obviously Kirby Smart and just the way they could dissect the game and their preparation and scheme is what separates them from a lot of guys. And, you know, the intimidation factor that we talked about, BK, just with the G on the chest, what that brings to the table, a little bit different, even though A&M, Kyle Field, that's a crazy environment. Trevor Gooseby, man, I can't say enough of how good he was. And if Kelvin Banks, you know, that ankle gets re-aggravated, God forbid, but that is a possibility. If he doesn't look right out there, I don't think Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood are going to have any panic about getting him out of the game and putting Gooseby in, and Gooseby picking up where this offensive line left off, which is up for the Joe Moore Award this year.
Here, Texas needs to be doing.
They're eating the dogs.
They're eating the dogs.
They're eating the dogs.
That's what needs to happen today, all right? Texas needs to be eating the dogs. We tried that in game one. Didn't work out too well. Hopefully in game two, it'll be a little bit different. That O-line has to be different, right? I mean, I'm looking at some of the numbers from the first Texas-Georgia game. The Texas O-line gave up 28 pressures. Not only a season high, that's a Steve Sarkisian era high. The Texas O-line played worse against Georgia this year than they did in any game when they finished 5-7 back in 2021. The 7 sacks allowed, double-digit TFLs allowed. Cam Williams had a couple of false starts, and he was a turnstile for the rest of the game. Even Kelvin Banks gave up a couple of sacks in that matchup. Like, it was a disastrous performance. Texas ran it 27 times for 29 yards. Now, the sack yardage is included there, which skews things a little bit, but still 1.1 yards a carry on the box score. Quinn Ewers got benched in that game. He looked so bad, but there's a lot to dive into and a lot that has to be different in part two for Texas. The biggest thing, though, the offensive line, whether it's Banks or whether it's Gooseby, those guys have looked great over the last month of the season. It almost felt like that Georgia game was a wake-up call for that group. But, man, if it's anything close to what we saw at DKR, it's going to be another long night for Texas.
Absolutely, and Quinn Ewers, just the way he was moving in that game, he looked so rattled. That was the worst game that he played easily. And in the pocket, he allowed those guys, even though they had some really good blocks, he allowed the pressure to get to him in ways that when we seen him at his best haven't been a problem. You go back to Michigan, he was moving around great. You go back to a couple of games after that oblique, when Kentucky and even Florida at times, and then this past weekend, Kyle Field. The dude, when he can move around, and he's not afraid to use those legs, then it makes life easier for everybody. I thought he was horrible in the pocket last time this matchup happened, and I don't think he's going to be like that today. I think him and guys like A.J. Milwee, who's done a terrific job, he doesn't get enough credit either, but they really broke down the game film with his footwork and mobility, and he's going to have to step up in the pocket and make some throws in traffic like every team that's beat Georgia this year.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, both of those guys utilize their legs in great ways to give their offense opportunities to make plays down the field and put pressure on Kirby Smart's defense. If Quinn Ewers does that today, then the Texas Longhorns should be in good shape.
Yeah, you talk about stepping up in the pocket. To me, the confidence has to be there in Quinn Ewers. And it feels like when he's on, he's confident. But when he's off, he's second-guessing himself. He's a little slow to make his decisions. He's hesitant, and that leads to some of the mistakes we've seen really over the entirety of his Texas career. He was kind of seeing ghosts in that first game. Now, he didn't have a lot of clean pockets, but when he did have clean pockets, he had happy feet. He was a little bit rattled.
Yeah.
So that can't happen today, right? The offensive line obviously has to do a better job, but Quinn, when he does have clean pockets, he's got to be confident. He's got to step up. He's got to be quick, sharp, and sound with his decision-making going up against a Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp defense. Good Quinn. I've compared him to a box of chocolates all year because you never know what you're going to get. You need that milk chocolate caramel-filled
milk chocolate
Ewers.
caramel's always crazy. When you get that like coconut in it, you ain't expecting it, or just that weird like cream feeling that nobody knows what it really is.
Get your fruit out of my chocolate and get your nuts out of my chocolate, all right? I don't want D's nuts in the chocolate. If we get the giant nut fruit Quinn Ewers chocolate today, it's going to be a long day.
It's going to be a long day, man.
Yeah.
And I think he's ready. I really do. That just how Kirby Smart motivated, no pun intended, his dogs in this game last time. You don't have that this time around, even though they're favored in Vegas and stuff, and a lot of people are picking them in 8 overtimes with Georgia Tech. This Longhorn team, I think they got humbled by that game. They realized they had a lot of stuff to correct as more Texas fans walk in the building.
Look at that jacket right there.
I know, man. He clean with the hat too, man. I'm
ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to see it. But I think Quinn Ewers, him just playing better football week in and week out since that game. Yes, he has his moments where he's always going to throw a horrible pass or, just be real loose with the ball. If he doesn't do those things, I really don't see Georgia winning this game. But it only takes one play to switch the momentum, and that could easily happen. This Georgia team, you got to respect them, but Quinn Ewers, you're right. Box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. But if he's right on today, hey, again, Longhorns, good shape.
I will say this about the Georgia defense, which has been pretty good this season and obviously was pretty great in Austin. Georgia only has 6 interceptions as a team this year. That's the 5th fewest in college football. Now, one of those picks came off of Quinn Ewers. Problem for Texas was they lost 3 fumbles in that game. So it was 4 turnovers for Texas. But in terms of interceptions, Georgia hasn't been that opportunistic today, so hopefully Quinn doesn't get baited into something because most of the teams that Georgia has played against haven't been this year.
Yeah, we know that they're going to be without Humphreys, who entered the transfer portal. That's been kind of a main event for them all week because he was starting in that game against Texas. He was starting, and now he wasn't, so guess he had to enter the portal there. But overall, even though they got some big-time players, Dan Jackson and Dalen Everett, Macaulay Starks is probably going to be a first-round pick, also up for the Jim Thorpe Award, along with Jahdae Barron.
Yeah.
Those guys have had some weird communication in the back end, and I don't know if that's because normally Georgia teams get a lot more pressure consistently. I mean, besides Texas, they weren't getting to the quarterback at a Georgia rate that we've grown accustomed to. So now that might not be an issue in this game, you should be able to make those plays down the field. But if the pressure's there, then the defense and the secondary, they're going to look how they looked in October 19th, where they were making plays and guys were able to go free and stick with these really speedy wide receivers that Texas has.
Yeah, it's weird looking at some of these Georgia season numbers on defense. Like the Georgia defense that we saw in Austin was different than the Georgia defense. Like if you watch that Georgia Tech game, a little bit different. If you watch that Ole Miss game or the Alabama game that you just referenced, a little bit different. 16 teams in the SEC. Georgia ranked 9th in total defense, 7th in scoring defense, 6th against the pass, 9th against the run. So no Texas fan is going to sit here and tell you that Georgia's defense is bad. We know what it's capable of. But when you think about how dominant the 2021 and 2022 back-to-back national champion Georgia defenses were, this group hasn't been that this year. And I don't know if there's ever a good time to be playing Georgia, but this doesn't feel like the same Bulldogs team that was running through the country in those 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's really odd, man. I mean, UMass puts up a crazy amount of yards on them. You go back to the Kentucky game, which the Horns, they drove Kentucky, but in that game, they only win by 1 point.
Yeah.
I get it. It's in Lexington, and every away game in the SEC is going to be a battle no matter what. But Mississippi State puts up 30-something. Again, 8 overtimes against Georgia Tech. Like Hayes King, he looked like Michael Vick that weekend. So it's just really odd to see a Georgia team look like this on the defensive side and be so inconsistent. And hey, if you get those up and down Georgia teams tonight, then you should be able to do what you want. But Steve Sarkisian got out coached by Kirby last time. I don't know if that's going to happen this time around.
I feel like Texas deserves that, right? We deserve to get the weaker Georgia team that most of the other teams in America saw this year.
Come on, man.
Like we have to get the best one.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
They ain't number one. Maybe that's what Kirby was using. Like,
yeah.
We should be number one. They're number one. They got into the college football playoff last year, and, it was a part of the reason why Georgia didn't make it, because the Longhorns win at Alabama, and then Georgia lost to Alabama, so maybe he used that too. The Justice Terry thing's going on now. That's
Georgia
I don't
fans
like
are
that.
pissed.
Georgia fans do not like the Justice Terry situation.
No, because when they were getting all the 5-star recruits, they were doing it legally. These kids just really wanted to play for Georgia. There was no under-the-table money going on, no JanSport backpacks given out. They were doing it the right way,
right.
And Texas is using all this NIL, and they're cheating to get all their players. That's what Georgia fans are thinking right now.
Yeah, ain't that something, man?
Yeah, hilarious.
That's absolutely hilarious. Hey, Kirby Smart is one of the best, man. Like, he has 2 national titles, very meat and potatoes, plain Jane guy. You got Steve Sarkisian coming in, flashy with the fly suits and stuff. So 2 completely different programs, one a little more blue collar than the other. But yeah, again, it's all going to be left on the field in between the trenches.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to worry about motivation at all. As our boy Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered coming through.
Take a seat,
yeah,
man.
Put on a headset.
Get comfortable.
I don't think you have to worry about motivation for either side in this game, right? Like, there's this national narrative out there that both teams are in the playoff. They don't really need this game. It doesn't matter that much to either team. But I think for Texas, we already talked about it, right? Winning the SEC in year 1, we know because Steve Sarkisian told us that was the number 1 goal for Texas going into this season. You get the chance to avenge your only loss during the regular year. There's so much at stake for why Texas cares a lot about this game. And for Georgia, some of the things that you just talked about. And Kirby Smart, I mean, that guy doesn't carry a chip on his shoulder. He carries a boulder on his shoulder. And he was pissed that his team was the underdog in that game in Austin. He basically admitted it in his post-game on-field interview right after the game. He went nuts talking to whoever it was. He's got to be telling his team, y'all remember what we did to them the first time? They're favored again. They're favored against y'all. They think you guys are going to lose to them today. So that's all Kirby Smart needs. Like, whenever his team has his back against the wall, or whenever Kirby Smart was able to convince his team in 2022 after they won the 2021 national title that nobody believed in them. Nobody thought they could do it again. Everybody thought they would fall off, even though they started the year in the top 3, and just about everybody was picking them to win it all. Like, this guy has the ability to get his guys up for just about every game. I don't think motivation is going to be a problem at all. As we welcome our man Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered.
What's up, dog?
Good to see you, man.
Too, man. How you holding up so far?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I really appreciate all of the Texas and Georgia fans that knocked some sense into me earlier this week to get here.
Yeah.
Originally, obviously, I thought we closed it out last weekend, the tour in Aggie Land, and obviously watching the Horns get the dub. So had a lot of fun there. Had a lot of fun in Austin a few weeks ago, but yeah, I'm just 2 hours down the road. It was like, why not? You know what I mean? It just makes sense to be here. Texas's first SEC championship, obviously taking on the Dogs, man. I'm giddy to be here, man. Giddy to be joining you guys, man. You guys have been crushing over the last 2 days. So
been a lot of fun.
Yeah. How y'all like the A, man? How you like ATL?
Love it.
It's nice, right?
Yeah. Get into a lot of trouble here.
You're gonna like the Benz, man.
Oh,
it's
man.
a sweet stadium.
Yeah.
So
hope we can get comfortable there. Hope this ain't the first trip around. Hope this is the many trips that we could take up here.
Yeah, I got a feeling Texas will be making repeat visits, more than likely. I mean, obviously the SEC is going to be crazy in the coming years, but yeah, I think the Longhorns are going to be here more than a few times.
I'd like to be here on January 20th. We'll worry about all those other years later.
That's the big one.
But would like to be back here in just over a month and a half. So you're making the day trip. You didn't stay last night?
No, I didn't stay last night. Not staying tonight. We're making the day trip because one of the big reasons too is tomorrow we'll get back. Chop it up content-wise, and we'll go live when the playoff rankings come out. We'll react to all that good stuff. So, just for the day. But, again, it's right down the road for me, so it's a pretty easy trip in that regard.
Well, we're happy you're here because Texas is 3-0 in games you've attended in person. You did not go to that Georgia game.
I had Aggies on the timeline that were saying they'd pay me not to go.
Yeah, there you go. Of course. I'm sure some Sooner fans were doing the same thing there.
They were like, please don't go, whatever you do.
Oh, man. So, Chris, we've been talking about this game. I want to get your thoughts on just what Texas has to do differently, right? You weren't in Austin for the first game, but you obviously watched the first matchup, Georgia 30, Texas 15. It was a game that the Bulldogs really dominated. They were up 23-0 at halftime. Texas just didn't have any answers, especially in that first half. What needs to change this time around for Texas to flip the script?
Oh, yeah, BK, I think the first things first, pretty simple, is get off to a better start.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes without saying, right? And I think the good news for Texas you can look at, we've been talking all week, is, you look at this matchup, you say to yourself, there's no way we get off to that bad of a start again. But why did you get off to that bad of a start? You couldn't protect Quinn Ewers, couldn't protect the quarterback, whoever was in there. Obviously, we saw Arch early in that game. Turnovers mounted, and it just seemed like one thing after another, over sort of that snowball effect. So I think if you don't put yourself behind the 8 ball, you can keep Quinn Ewers upright for the most part. Find more balance with the running game. I think you ran for 29 yards in that football game. So, and obviously the way Trey Wisner and that rushing attack has been over the last few weeks, you have a lot of confidence that that's not going to be the case this time around. So, getting in some second and manageables, third and manageables, not allowing that Georgia defensive front and Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann to just pin their ears back and make life really difficult on Quinn. You can do that, again, just getting off to a better start as a whole. I don't think defensively you worry a ton. I think it's the way the defense has been playing, the way they played even in that first matchup were really good.
No.
I think if you can sort of copy that performance for the most part, build off what you've been doing, and just get out of the gate stronger, I think you're going to be in a good position.
I want to ask you about the quarterbacks in this game, Chris. It's been up and down seasons for both Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck. I mean, Carson Beck had a month this year where he threw 5 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Yeah. Now, the last 3 games, all wins for Georgia, 11 touchdowns, 0 picks. So he's found something. He's turned a corner. He's been red hot. For Quinn Ewers, same thing, up and down season. Both of these guys were expected to be in New York for the Heisman ceremony at the end of the year. Both of these guys we thought had a chance to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Feels like that's not happening with either of these dudes right now. Going into today, which of these 2 quarterbacks are you more confident in? Quinn Ewers at Texas, Carson Beck at Georgia?
Right now, I'd probably go Quinn. I think Quinn has been more consistent of the 2. I think Carson's, based off the way they've played this year, I feel like Carson's ceiling might be a little bit higher. I feel like Quinn's floor is higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I think Quinn Ewers has caught a lot of flack, probably unnecessarily. I mentioned this story. I was at the Texas Vandy game in Nashville, and the people behind me were Texas fans that made the trip, and they were griping about the quick game and the short passes. And I just was one particular in the game where, Quinn fires it out. It's obviously – I think we lost it.
You're good.
There we go. Okay.
Yep.
Anyways, it's obviously called, though. He fires out the quick game. People behind me are griping about it, and then it goes for a 15-yard gain. So it's like there's almost like this underlying where you're always wanting more out of Quinn Ewers, even though he's still been pretty good. I'm not saying, again, he doesn't need to make strides, and he has to obviously play really well today, but I'd probably go Quinn. Like, we had this conversation a few days ago. If I had a game-winning drive on the line, and I had who was the one quarterback in the SEC I'd give the football to right now, I'd probably go Quinn Ewers. I mean, listen, the league is what it is when it comes to quarterback play. A lot of inconsistency, but I think Quinn is a guy that, he does a really good job, I feel like most times, of not losing the football game, right? Not turning the football over. I thought he did exactly that in the Texas A&M game. So right now I would go Quinn.
Okay.
I think it's neck and neck, though. I think you flip a coin, either one of these guys. I mean, that's a big part of this game, too, but I'm hesitant obviously to say that this game all comes down to quarterback play because Carson Beck plays miserably in the first outing and Georgia won by 15. So it's like it maybe is not as simple as just the quarterback.
That was a frustrating part of the first game for Texas fans is, your defense was really good. It gave up one drive of more than 34 yards. You forced 3 interceptions, and you still lost the game by 2 scores. So frustrating, but this Texas defense has passed every test this season. They were great against Georgia the first time around. We know Carson Beck can be susceptible for the turnovers. As y'all have to trust us because right now Chip Brown is not on camera because it's a little tight. We're squeezed in a little bit
Long
here.
night last night at Cheetah?
No, I was I stayed at the hotel.
Okay, all right.
Did all my damage right there. How about y'all?
Dude, I just got in this morning, man, so I'm feeling good.
You're peppy and alive.
I won some money last night. I had Army plus 4.5, had Boise minus whatever they were, 3.5.
Yeah,
let's go.
Man.
Where's your money today?
My money SMU. I do have Georgia.
Oh,
so,
come on.
Not a lot. Though.
Why'd you ask, Chip?
I know you shouldn't have asked.
Sorry.
SMU minus 2.5. We've got the under in the Miami of Ohio. We've got Arizona State minus 2.5. So, but we started the weekend 2-0.
The under's looking good, and
man.
5 seconds in, it's 0-0.
I saw Ohio, and I was like, "Give me the under." That play just felt. Sometimes you got to go with a gut play. You know what I mean? I couldn't name one player in either one of those.
I'm so jet lagged from the drive to Atlanta that I forgot this game's going on right now.
Yeah, well, welcome to noon Eastern kickoffs.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
I don't know how you Eastern time folk do it.
Dude, I don't know how you do 11 a.m. kickoff.
There's nothing wrong with the noon kick. That's not the issue. The issue is if your team is playing a West Coast game, it doesn't start until 10 p.m. Are you kidding me?
I know. Yeah.
How do you do that?
You got to be a trooper, man. You got to be a trooper. I feel like the further west you go, the more of a morning person you got to be.
Obviously, we think Central's the best for a lot of reasons, but look, Pacific time, I can't do 9 a.m. kicks. 9 a.m. college football, that's sacrilegious right there. We'll take the 11 a.m.s that we get in the Central time zone, but we didn't come here to talk about time zone. So, Chip, I asked Chris this question. I want to get your thoughts on it too. It's been an up and down year for Carson Beck. It's been an up and down year for Quinn Ewers. Do you have more confidence in?
I think it's Quinn Ewers because he's trending in the right direction. You know, what we saw from him against Texas A&M in the first half, and even, in the third quarter, again, Texas had the ball for 12 minutes and change. They got outscored 7-0 because they drove the length of the field twice and turned it over in the red zone. But, Quinn's got to get rid of that one bonehead decision per game. Even when he's playing at his best, except when he beat Alabama. But this is when you need big game Quinn Ewers, like you saw in the Big 12 championship game a year ago. This is what he's been working for. The history stuff matters to him. He wants to lead this team to a championship. He wants years up in the stadium that he led, the team. And so I'm expecting good Quinn Ewers today, elite Quinn Ewers today. Now, easier said than done against Georgia's defense. We saw, Ewers spent most of that game staring up at the sky. 7 sacks. Arch got a little taste of it too. Both of them had a strip sack. So I just think, Quinn knows what to expect. There's no doubt about that. So I expect to see elite Quinn Ewers today.
Okay. I think it's going to be paramount for Texas' success. Zay, how are you feeling about Quinn Ewers? I want to ask you the same question, but what's your confidence level in Quinn Ewers being good Quinn today?
Well, up and down because, again, like Chip said, that one bonehead play, it's always going to be there. And I thought he had more in a way against A&M. They just didn't capitalize on him. I mean, Bryce Anderson completely smoked the interception to Gunnar Helm. He had another play where, they got their hands on the ball. It could have had an interception, but they dropped it. So that always scares me about Quinn. But the fact that he was able to move so well with the ankle injury against the Aggies, that really impressed me. And he made some big-time throws that they needed to win that game. Yeah. So if he could, again, stay upright like CP said and just get the ball down the field because this offensive line is protecting him and they actually can figure out what Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart are doing before the snap, unlike they did in the first matchup. And Quinn Ewers, he should be all right.
Chris, you've been watching this Georgia team for a number of years now, but obviously you've been locked into them this season. Zay and I were talking before you got here. This just doesn't feel like the same Georgia team. Now, the group that came to Austin, that looked like 2021 and 2022 Georgia, but I gave some of the numbers a little bit earlier this season. I mean, Georgia's 15th out of 16 teams in the SEC in rushing offense. They're 9th in total defense, 7th in scoring defense, 9th in rush defense. Like, they used to be in the top 1 or 2 in all of those categories. And look, they're still a top 5 team in America. They're playing for the SEC championship. You can't say it's been a bad year for the Bulldogs, but it's just what's been different about this year's team versus the one that seemingly dominated everybody not named Alabama in these last 3 seasons?
Yeah, I think, BK, to your point, they haven't lived up to the Georgia standard. You know, talking to folks there in Athens, like, to your point, you know, when you had guys like Jalen Carter and those dudes roaming the defensive front, there was an adjustment after that. Those guys just aren't – they're not walking around every cycle, right? So they're still trying to replace those, obviously. I mean, I think there's a number of things for Georgia. I think you look at lack of depth, lack of quality depth in regards to what they had in years past. I mean, I think the portal and NIL is somewhat to think of that. We just saw Texas benefit with that with the Justice Terry commitment.
Nah, that was clean. No money involved.
For sure. No, listen, it's all good. We can be open about it. I think I just saw Jalen Daniels at Kansas. It was announced he just signed a new deal to come back to school. It was like, at least we're putting it in the open now. Like,
1-year contract.
Exactly what's going down. Yeah, for sure. It's no big deal. So, you know, but I think, you know, guys don't want to sit around and wait 2-3 years by their time, because you kind of used to say with Georgia is that today's second and third stringers are tomorrow's draft picks. And a lot of those guys now, they want to go elsewhere. I mean, a guy like Jalen Humphreys, defensive back that played in that game against Texas, that's like their 4th or 5th guy, he hit the portal this week. I don't know why he did it. I don't understand it, but there's probably more to it behind the scenes. So, yeah, I mean, I just think with Georgia, man, I think that, you know, they're not able to kind of stockpile that talent like they have in years past. I will say this, too. I mean, Georgia's played a really, really daunting schedule. I'll give them credit for that. They've gone through the fire. They've really tested themselves. But I mean, I just think defensively, they just don't have some of those freaks roaming around like they used to. And this Georgia team, BK and guys, what's so interesting about them, they almost, to a point to me, they look like they're bored at times. Like I haven't seen a Georgia team in very long time play to the level of their competition like this one does. Because I fully expect today Georgia's going to come out and you're going to be like, that's Georgia. Yep. Yeah, that's not the Georgia we saw against Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes last weekend. You know, it's just, I don't know what it is about them. I mean, like you mentioned, we've seen them. I saw them against Tennessee a few weeks ago go out there and look like a well-oiled machine, and Carson Beck played phenomenally, and the defense was great, shut down Nico in that offense. I saw them at Ole Miss get absolutely what I think maybe could happen in this game today. I mean, I think Texas's defensive front, the way they've been playing, very comparable to that Ole Miss front, and Georgia just got bullied all night. So, you know, I think if you ask Kirby Smart, he'd kind of tell you the same thing, man. It's college football is so week to week this year, and this team, you know, has just been so Jekyll and Hyde. But obviously, he and that staff are hoping they get the best version of that ball club today. Because if they do, and we saw it against Texas, to your point, Georgia's played one game this year where they look like a true, you know, elite national champion, and it was against the Longhorns in their place. You know, I mean, in a game where everybody, for the most part, thought Texas was going to roll, and I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons coming in this one, man. I can't fall into that trap again. If Sark and the boys go out, if the boys go out there and dominate, I'll tip my cap, say, you know what, Texas was the better team. They just laid an egg maybe the first time. Sure, not taking anything away from Georgia, but at the same time, man, I could see more of the same from the first matchup. Maybe not quite the mark feet, but I just ready. They will come out hair on fire in this football game. I fully expect that.
Well, look, you know, Texas hasn't played the toughest schedule in America. I think that's obvious. But you look at the games before Georgia the first time around, and there was a huge step up in class, Georgia versus the first 5 teams that Texas played this season, right? The game at Michigan may be okay. They beat Ohio State, but still, this is a down year for Michigan. The Oklahoma game, normally a lot tougher and tighter than what we got this season. Like, going from the first 5 games that Texas played to the Georgia team that came in town, I think it was a little bit of a wake-up call. Like, okay, this is the standard, right? Steve Sarkisian all season long has been about the standard. That's a word he's used time and time again, Zay. Georgia's the standard. You'd like to be the standard, but your standard on that day wasn't good enough. You've got to elevate to Georgia standard. We're talking about a team that is 51-1 against schools not named Alabama since the start of the 2021 season. So your standard has to be on Georgia's level if you want to find a win today.
Yeah, ain't nothing like some old humble pie, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what you got the first matchup around. And now, after you go into Vietnam, defeat them, like normal SEC folks, they didn't really understand how much Arkansas really hates Texas. What you did to these, they're ready for today. And I get what Chris Phillips is saying. Like, Kirby Smart scares the hell out. I respect that guy so much. And I just on a petty note that Steve Sarkisian and all the hype he gets. Again, Sark's so flashy and the fly-ass suits, man. And Kirby Smart is just meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
You know, just the kind of blue-collar, old school, used to be a safety, alma mater's Georgia. Like, he really loves that program and wants to see them succeed to the highest level. And he coaches that way, and his players, even though this year has been rocky, when it comes to the big games, it's time for them to step up, they usually bring it. And that's the scariest part of this game. Even though on paper it seems like Texas has the better roster and everything else, Kirby Smart, man, he just gets them boys ready to play. And if he has them boys ready to play today, then Texas going to be in a dogfight.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to some of our pre and post game sponsors. Hit us up on the YouTube Clean Cause comments line. Check out Clean Cause drinks. They've got the delicious yerba mate drinks, a bunch of different flavors. And the best part, 50% of profits from Clean Cause go to help addiction recovery. They are giving back to the community, and you can give to yourself by drinking some of the great Clean Cause drinks available all over the great state of Texas. I'm sure they've got them here in the ATL as well. But you can do that on the Clean Cause YouTube comments line.
BK, I want to say this really quickly
Shoot.
too. I want to make sure I clarify because we've it's been really cool over the last few months, certainly during the season, a few weeks ago. Made a lot of great relationships with a lot of great Texas folks. I want to make sure. So when I brought up Georgia's schedule, I do think that the Texas schedule criticism is a little overblown.
It's a lot of
I'll just say this, and I'll say why. Did Texas play the hardest schedule in the SEC this year? No, they didn't. They didn't. But the thing I will give Texas credit for that many others, it seems like, are not willing to, they handled their business. I mean, every SEC team, every team in the conference had that vomit all over themselves game. Ole Miss had it. I mean, Georgia had it. Everybody's had it. LSU had it. Everybody. Alabama had it. Texas didn't have it. I mean, they lost to Georgia. There's nothing to hang your head about. It happens. A lot of teams lose to Georgia. Most everybody loses to Georgia.
Just gave the stat.
But, listen, give credit. Texas went into Nashville, beat a top 25 Vandy. They went into Vietnam, beat a really tough, dangerous Arkansas team. They went into College Station, beat a top 25 A&M that was feeling really good. Some people, like me, with misguided predictions, picking the Aggies to win the game. I mean, they went into some tough things. I mean, even Kentucky down the stretch, who wasn't good, but, had some – we talked about all week the personnel they had on defense. So Texas did not have that just trip at the finish line kind of game, again, like so many others in the SEC. And I think they deserve credit for that. I'll give Texas credit for that. Again, and it's not their fault Michigan sucked. It's not their fault that some of these other teams that were on the schedule, it's not their fault Oklahoma sucked, right? Let me say it again, sucked. Right?
And still
right.
suck.
And still
you don't have
sucked.
to past tense that. They suck. They always have, and they always will,
right.
Chris.
So, yeah, I think Texas deserves credit. Again, you're right. This is a different beast, but I just want to make it clear. I give Texas credit again for handling their business throughout the season. Many opportunities where other teams would have fallen. They got the job done.
Yeah.
Now you got to give them credit.
Look, Texas had the easiest schedule in the SEC, according to the numbers. Now, the easiest schedule in the SEC is still the 32nd hardest schedule in college football, meaning there were 100 teams that played Division I FBS football this year that had easier schedules than Texas.
Well,
so when I hear like Big Ten fans and ACC fans and Big 12 fans talking about Texas's schedule, it's like, you guys try this.
Well, BK, what you're supposed to say in response to that is, because I'm sure it's many rival fan bases bringing it up, you just say, well, the schedule was so easy because A&M, Oklahoma, you were on it.
Yeah.
I mean, if roles are reversed, we made your schedule harder, not the other way around.
Well, that's the thing. Like, there have been so many instances over human history where if you told somebody Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M.
Yeah.
You have all of those games on your schedule. It'd be like, oh, shit, that's Murderer's Row.
Yeah.
Like, no way you're going to win all of those games. Well, it's different. Every year is different. It's cyclical in college football. But I will say this, Texas, the easiest schedule in the SEC, according to the numbers. Ole Miss, the second easiest schedule in the SEC. That's why everybody thought
they
the
lost
Rebels,
to that Kentucky team.
That's why everyone thought the Rebs were going to
yeah.
be in this game this year, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's why everyone kind of pinned them in as a playoff team. They lost 3 times against a basically identical schedule to what Texas had this season.
Yeah.
So you got to take care of your business. You said it perfectly, Chris. Texas didn't have that vomit on themselves games that so many other teams, not just in the SEC, but around the country had. So that's a big part of why Texas is. We talked about this yesterday. We did a live show in Midtown. Shout out to Fido Irish Pub for having us yesterday.
Awesome.
Good time there. And thanks to everybody who came out to see us yesterday. The Texas run game. There are a number of things that need to be different today versus October 19th. Maybe the number one thing is Texas has to run it for more than 29 yards and 1.1 yards a carry in the rematch against Georgia. The Longhorns have turned a corner, more than 200 rushing yards in the last 2 games against 2 pretty good defenses with Kentucky and Texas A&M. You touched on it yesterday, but I want to get your thoughts again. What's changed for this Texas ground game, and why do you feel like today's performance against Georgia is going to be different?
Well, I think they made some, technical adjustments in the way that they man and zone their running game in the blocking scheme. And the consistency now of the offensive line is giving Quintravian Wisner confidence. He's running and he's seeing the space open. And the more he sees it, the more confidence he gets, the better he becomes in terms of knowing when the offensive line and specific offensive linemen are going to come off. And he gets better as the game goes on. And that's what you want, because look, today's going to be rough. He could be averaging 2 yards a carry after the first quarter, and they have to stick with it. They got to stick with it.
Yeah.
And look, Sark is as good as it gets in terms of play actioning off of the run, and he needs that play action. Quinn Ewers needs that play action today, because the thing that got Texas in the last game was they got off schedule over and over and over again. And as that continued to happen, Kirby just kept adding more pressure.
Yep.
And so it was like, oh, yeah. For they didn't respond until they were down 23. Gets real small today against teams like drives. And Sark usually is kind of cavalier about false starts. He's like, no problem. Those holdings, those are the ones that bother me.
Mm-hmm.
That puts us 10 yards behind. A 5-yard penalty against Georgia last time was enough. So, and I think you'll see Kelvin Banks today. He wants to play. I was told last night he'd have to be dead not to play. So I think you'll see Kelvin Banks. I don't know for how long, but I think you'll see him today.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I was at game day earlier. They mentioned he was a game time decision. How does the concern level change if Kelvin Banks is limited to a point to where you're not able to get the best version of Kelvin Banks?
I mean, it's definitely concerning. The dude's All-American. Is going to be probably a top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. But Trevor Gooseby, what he did in the A&M game. Again, A&M, Georgia, 2 different beasts. But that guy to come into that atmosphere and dominate, the way he did, like Nick Scorton, all those big-time defensive linemen, they weren't able to get to Quinn. And we saw what Trevian Wisner did, 86 yards on the ground, 33 carries. Now, 33 carries is a lot. I don't know if you'd want to give him that. That's why I think Jaden Blue has to be big in this game also. But overall, yes, it's concerning, but Kyle Flood, I think just having the help from Hayden Connor at left guard, Jake Majors, there's so much experience to help somebody that's young and inexperienced like a Trevor Gooseby. If they got into those moments, I think all week they prepared for it. They should be all right. But whenever you're without a top 10 pick, Kelvin Banks, you got to be concerned.
Yeah, I'm concerned.
We were talking about Quinn Ewers. I mean, Texas got to find a run game against Georgia. They have to run the ball. That's the bottom line. I mean, it's you look at that first matchup again. My eyes go straight to that 29 rushing yards. And that's why Texas's offense has been better of late, because they run the football. They got to be and the thing with Texas, I think they got to be a little stingy with it. If it's not working early, I think you got to continue, because your defense is probably going to keep you in the game. I think as long as your offense isn't doing it the first time and giving short fields and turning the football over, defense is going to probably keep Georgia at bay. I think got to continue to try to run it. Like, I think Sark sometimes, this is a criticism and complaint I hear a lot. He gets away from it. He'll have success running, and then he'll throw 3 straight passes. Like, he just can't wait. Yeah. It's like, you got to be – this is a marathon today. You know what I mean? Like, this is a long 60-minute battle. Stay stingy with the run game. Ride your horse. Again, I agree. I don't think you want to give it to Wisner 33 times, but he has shown you need 25, 26 carries today. I think he'd be more than willing to do it. So.
Yeah, Trey Wisner, the last 2 games, 59 carries, 343 yards.
That last weekend reminded me of like an old, like mid-2000s. I thought I was watching like Cedric Benson out there.
That's exactly what I said.
Dude, I thought it was Cedric Benson.
He looked like Cedric Benson.
That's a name.
Man.
Averaged 171 and a half
yards. That's the Texas running back of my childhood right there.
There you go.
Cedric Benson.
Rest in peace.
God bless his soul.
The great Ceddy B. But the first 9 games for Trey Wisner, he averaged 10 carries a game and 52 yards. The last 2 games, just shy of 30 carries a game, 171 and a half yards. And it's crazy. Like, Steve Sarkisian in his last 12 seasons as a head coach or an offensive coordinator has had a 1,000-yard rusher. And for most of this season, it's like, Texas ain't going to get that this year. Now Trey Wisner sitting at 812 rushing yards. Look, Texas may need the help of the extended playoff and the extra conference championship game that they're getting today, but that streak might stay alive because of what Trey Wisner has done. They're going to need to use him today. I don't know if you could do 30 to 35 carries, but Zay, it feels like CP is maybe onto something here. It feels like Steve Sarkisian has maybe changed his ways a little bit because, hell, you go back to the Arkansas game, right? Fourth quarter of that game when things were starting to unravel, Steve Sarkisian trusted his run game to put that game on ice. They did. Kentucky game, 15-play drive to put it on ice. All runs. Trusted him. It worked. A&M, a lot of the second half using the run game, especially after those Quinn Ewers turnovers in the third quarter. It almost feels like maybe Steve Sarkisian now is a believer in this run game and has the confidence that it doesn't matter what time of game it is. It doesn't matter what the scoreboard is showing. He can rely on Trey Wisner to pick up some yards for him.
Yeah, and in a way, you could kind of understand why he's been a little hesitant to really go all in. You got C.J. Baxter, who tore his knee up and missed the whole season, so that derailed a lot of things to start the year. And then you come in with Jaden Blue, who looked good at first, but then he had a fumbling problem. And Trey Wisner was supposed to be RB3. Do you really believe in that already? Jared Gibson, you don't see him getting any bump no more. No. So it's kind of been all over the place for Tashard Joyce's room. And Tashard Joyce, one of the best in the business. I think just with how the offensive line has come along, everything has worked as of late to where, yeah, there's going to be times where you might get stopped a little. Bit to the last thing you want if you're the Texas Longhorns.
You make a great point, Zay. You're not going to beat Georgia without balance. Yeah, you just can't. I trust Kirby Smart way too much if you're going to be one-dimensional against him. I mean, because to your point, if I'm Kirby Smart, my game plan, because I think that's what's really interesting dynamic that he called him out. He's like, y'all are both full of shit when it comes to like how much are you adjusting? Like, obviously, neither one of them is going to say. But if I'm Kirby and company, I think, again, that'll be an interesting dynamic. Sark's going to probably reinvent his game plan a little bit. How much does Kirby adjust? You don't want to overthink it, because then if you overthink and they don't, you know what I'm saying? So it can get messy. If I'm Kirby, I'm sending no pun intended, I'm sending the dogs again. I'm forcing the issue. Like, I'm letting them loose. I'm letting the dogs out their cage, and I'm coming after Quinn Ewers. I'm going to force the issue and make him beat me.
Yeah, you want to.
You want to
see if they can handle it.
Sure,
you have to.
How have you grown? What have you learned? I mean,
how much different are you really?
Right.
Who are you really?
We got some, manimals over here. Yeah. Michael Williams and Jalen Walker and Landon Wilson. I mean, Michael and Jalen combined for 5 sacks.
That was Michael Williams like coming out party against
God.
Texas, because he had been very dealing with the injuries. He had been kind of, where's he at? Texas. He played like a first rounder that night.
Yeah, he was absolutely.
And this is a big money game today, by the way. A lot of guys.
Right. Contract.
That's why, like a guy like Kelvin Banks, man, I think if you're trying to put good film out there, and they were talking about on game day, you want to show these NFL scouts that, hey, I'm willing to play through. I can, I'm tough, I'm resilient. I can play through a lingering injury or what have you. So it's you're going to see some guys, I think, rise to the occasion.
Well, and Banks got embarrassed.
He did.
Yeah. And so he wants to correct the record, Hey, I know you're going to ask me about this game, but did you see the rematch? I did that on a sprained ankle.
Yeah, just getting the opportunity.
It's wild to think about if the bracket works out, we really could get this game 3 times.
Well, yeah, if you look at the rankings that came out on Tuesday,
it would line up.
It would line up in the second round, right? Texas was the 2 seed, Georgia was the 7 seed. So things will change. The seeding will change. Obviously hoping Texas stays as one of the top 2 seeds, because we know what
each other, trying to separate them just a little bit, not too much where you're screwing some of these other teams that are getting in. But if they were to meet a third time, maybe be back here in Atlanta for the national championship. But hey, I'm not part of that committee. Those guys know more than I do about.
No, I don't know. I'm about to say we think they know more. I don't know about that.
I like to give them more credit than what they deserve. But at the end of the day, I'm with BK.
Well,
tell me after the game.
Hey, listen, everybody talks about SEC bias. Y'all about to learn about what Alabama bias is when SMU loses to Clemson and Bama stays at 11. SAU, watch.
This ain't my first rodeo. That's your SMU grad over here, all right?
Now, listen, I picked SMU, but I'm just saying if it were to happen, I think Bama's in no matter what.
Oh,
I really do.
No, I
think Bama's in no matter what.
I fear for the Mustangs if it doesn't go well.
Just go beat Clemson. That's it. Just go beat Clemson.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's it. Clemson team in the playoff. That's all you got to do.
In 30.
In a big game. I'll take anybody over Georgia to answer that question, CP. All right, guys, we've got some sponsored segments on our pregame show that the Buck and I usually do. We'll start with this one, our offensive player of the game prediction. And because Chris is here, we can open this up to Texas or Georgia. Normally, we keep this to Texas. This is brought to you by our friends at Verde's Mexican Parrilla back in Austin off of Hamilton Pool Road, just off of Highway 71. If you're looking for a great place to catch dinner tonight, maybe watch the game as well, Verde's Mexican Parrilla, serving up all of your favorite Mexican and Tex-Mex classics. Great food, great vibes, the giant outdoor patio, the gorgeous indoor dining area. Perfect date night, perfect to bring the family, perfect for your next big event. Zay, I'll go to you first. Offensive player of the game prediction for the SEC championship.
I'm going to go with Gunnar Helm. I think Gunnar Helm is so reliable, an absolute matchup nightmare. Him and Quinn Ewers have such good chemistry. I think if you could get Big 85 going in this game, especially, Georgia, they're going to put you in some 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 situations. That's where Gunnar Helm really shines. I mean, he's such a big target. We know how athletic he is, and I feel like this could be a big-time coming-out party for him as far as national media goes. I'm going to go with Gunnar Helm there.
Yeah, Gunnar Helm, the stats, guys. 48 catches, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. David Thomas, the tight end on the 05 National Championship game, through his first 12 games of the 05 season, 50 catches, 613 yards, 5 touchdowns. So, Chip, almost identical to what is regarded by many as the best tight end season in school history. That's what Gunnar Helm's doing right now.
Yeah, I think Gunnar Helm's the best tight end in the country. I mean, I know, the kid at Bowling Green and the kid Tyler Warren at Penn State are really fantastic players, but look at all the third down catches, all the big play. To Helm, who then hurdles and gets 22 yards. But, Quintravian Weisner, how crazy is this? I mean, he almost gets the job by default because he's the only back who can hang on to the football.
Yeah.
Did you hear Nick Saban roasting Jaden Blue? He also roasted Kevin Jennings for carrying it a little too loose. But Quintravian Weisner's been the guy who's been the most ball secure, and now he's turned into a punisher. As CP said, like Sed Benson, he did remind you of Sed Benson in that game. So Quintravian Weisner, this offensive line, they got to have a great day today, because if they do, Quinn Ewers is probably going to have a great day.
So I'll give one for each side.
Okay.
Texas, I agree. I think it's Trey Weisner. I think if Texas is going to win this game, it's because they were able to find balance, and they're going to find balance through their running game. That starts with Weisner. At this point, it kind of feels like it ends with Weisner. Like, he's going to be the guy. Sneaky one for you, Arch Manning in the red zone. I think Arch, I don't know if he'll be player of the game, but could be obviously an X factor. I don't know if this has been coined by anyone yet, but I heard somebody in the stands last week call it the 16-wheeler package. I loved that. I don't know why that's not like on T-shirts already.
Here's a little Texas history for you, Chris. So
Am I missing something?
Tyrone Swoops, former quarterback at Texas,
Okay.
wore number 18. And
18-wheeler.
And it was the 18-wheeler package. And it worked at times, like the game-winning touchdown Texas had against Notre Dame and the whole Joe Test. I don't even want to continue that story. But that was a rough era for Texas football.
Okay, fair enough.
The 18-wheeler package was a part of that, and there's UTSD associated with it.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I've learned very much about UTSD this season. Anyways, however much they mix Arch in the game plan, I think that's been really interesting what Sark's been able to do with Arch Manning down in the red zone, using his mobility. Georgia has struggled with mobile quarterbacks. And I think on the Georgia side, again, might feel like low-hanging fruit, but, it's very – public knowledge. I picked the Dogs to win this game. If they do, it's Carson Beck's going to be the MVP. I think the way he's been playing of late has not been talked about enough. I had many a Texas fan point out on the timeline that one of those games is against UMass. One of those games is against Georgia Tech. I fully understand that, but I still believe momentum is a real thing. I don't know what happened in that Tennessee game that I was at, that he took one shot on that run when they were down 10-0. He hasn't been the same guy since. It's like it knock the cobwebs off him or something. So, again, if Georgia wins this football game, I picked them to do so. I think it'll be Carson Beck with an efficient performance. Not saying he's going to go throw for 350 because I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, but I think it'll be Carson Beck probably leading a late drive, playing one of his more efficient football games of the year and leading Georgia. So it's going to have to be. I think he's going to have to play well.
I want to ask all of you guys this question. And Chris, I'll start with you. What about the Georgia offense scares you? Because they've got 3 running backs who were listed as questionable on the injury report. We'll see if Trevor Etienne plays. He had 3 touchdowns in the game in Austin, so he gave the Texas defense some problems in that first matchup, but he's missed the last 3 games with a rib injury. We don't know if he's going to play today. Georgia's wide receivers, even in that game in Austin, Georgia could have won that game by more if their receivers could catch the football, and that wasn't a one-off. Their receivers have had trouble holding on to the ball all season long, so they recruit dogs, literally and figuratively. There's talent on that offense, but is there anything, Chris, that really scares you and you think maybe should scare the Texas defense today?
No, I don't think it's a scary offense. I mean, listen, I think if this game gets into a shootout, it bodes really well for Texas. I think Georgia needs – I picked the score 23-21. This game needs to be – styles make fights, and the fight Georgia wants to be in is a low-scoring type of battle. I don't think they want to be in a 34-31, 38-35 kind of game. I think that favors Texas in this. So, yeah, to your point, the one thing I would say with Georgia, I think, like I said, momentum, I think, is a really a real thing. Talking to some folks there in Athens, again, they've done a lot better job of late, not dropping the football, to your point. A lot of their playmakers have really I trust Texas's playmakers more than Georgia's. I trust Golden, Bolden, Bond, all those guys, Helm. I will say I liked what I've seen from Oscar Delp of late, talking tight ends. He's a guy that hasn't been used nearly as much as he probably should have been this year, but when he is, I think he is one of the best tight ends in the SEC. Benjamin Urosic's come on of late for them at tight end. Dominic Lovett was featured in that Tech game a few weeks ago in Tennessee. So it's not a scary offense in my mind, but they got some dudes. They do. They've got some dudes. Now, what happens at running back? Great question. I saw Trevor Etienne. He's another guy. Might try to give it a go today, and we'll see. Game time decision, but realistically, it's probably going to be Nate Frazier and Cash Jones, and it's going to be kind of a running back by committee deal. And also, listen, Georgia's offensive line has been – they've been hit or miss. They've been very hit or miss. So, no, listen, I would not label Georgia's offense as scary, but I do think it's a situation in which, it all comes down to, I feel like if you tell me right now Carson Beck does not turn the football over, listen, he turned it over 3 times and they won by two scores last time. So, if he doesn't turn it over, I think Georgia's got a great shot. Again, that was a much different game, but I think Georgia will have to win this in a lower scoring game. If Texas early, if we're talking like 14-0 first quarter, horns are up, it could be a very, very long day for the Dogs.
Zay, I'll go to you. What scares you about this Georgia offense going up against this Texas defense?
Probably the heater that Carson Beck's been on the last 3 games. Like CP has said, ever since that Tennessee game, the dude has figured it out. And I get it, UMass is UMass, but, the guy he can't help the drops. And they have been using Oscar Delp a lot more. I feel like they were a little afraid to put him in that complete Brock Bowers role, but now they've been putting the same stuff that you saw Bowers succeed on these last few years, of putting Delp in that type of situation. So, yeah, we'll see where Etienne is today, but, yeah, this offense goes as high as Carson Beck goes.
Zay, to your point, being at that Tennessee game, as well as he played, and to y'all's point, watching that in person, you're like, this guy just gets no help. Yeah. I see Texas's guys. I see Matthew Golden all the time take a 50-50 ball and make it a 70-30 or an 80-20 ball. Gunnar Helm does that. Other guy, these are 70-30 balls. They're turning into 50-50s if you're Georgia. They're dropping. Even in the Tennessee game, he played so well. It's like, God, if he just had some dudes step up and make some plays for him on the outside, it'd be really dangerous. So, and this is a game today. Realistically, I think it's going to be close. It's cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. This game is going to come down to 4 or 5 plays in the ballgame. Probably going to come down to 4 or 5 one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Whose guy's better than the other guy? That's probably who's going to win the game. That's what it comes to. So, if you're Georgia, today's the day you have to make those plays. If you don't, you will not win. It's as simple as that.
Vegas is agreeing with you, just a 3-point line for this matchup. Chip, I'll go to you first on this one. Defensive player of the game prediction. While we're talking about the matchup between the Georgia offense and the Longhorn defense, which has been the best in the country for my money all season long, who's your defensive player of the game prediction for Texas today?
You know, Andrew Makuba had one of the best interceptions of the season in this game back in October, where he was on the, depending on what, he was on the opposite half of the field and read the play, went all the way over, climbed the ladder to make the interception in Georgia territory. It was a huge play, should have been a momentum play. Unfortunately, Texas offense gained 1 yard on the next 3 plays and punted after Makuba intercepted the ball at the Georgia 42. Something tells me Makuba is going to come up with another big play in this game. Love Michael Taft, love Jade, and obviously Anthony Hill is everywhere. And Trey Moore. Although I just need to be quiet. Andrew Makuba. Andrew Makuba.
Player of the game, not all 11 players.
Andrew Makuba is my defensive player of the game.
Okay, Zach?
Now, to Chip's point, there's so many guys that you could choose from.
Sure.
So many different guys been making plays each and every week. I'm going to go with the Cedar Creek alum, Alfred Collins, man. I just think his draft stock has gone through the roof as of late. And we know what he did to ice the game against Arkansas. But Alfred Collins, man, with his measurements, I think he can really disrupt the game and get his hands up and bat some balls down, tip balls that Carson Beck might try to throw on those drag routes or those quick short stuff. Alfred Collins could make a huge play in this game that could swing the momentum and give the Horns a serious advantage. And I like big fella in this one. I really do.
Yeah. Chris, any thoughts?
I'll go Vernon Broughton.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one. I enjoyed watching him last week. Big body there in the middle. So I think, again, they're going to have to stop Georgia's run. It's kind of a very similar battle between these two sides. Can you run it, stop it, and don't turn it over? It's pretty simple recipe today. I think, but to your point, I could go Ant Hill too.
I was going to say, none of y'all picked Ant Hill, so I'll just go ahead and take
I'll
Hill.
give you that one. But loved watching him in College Station last week and in Austin 2 weeks ago. Guy plays with a bad attitude, which is the best compliment you can give a linebacker like that. So I'm sure he'll be flying around today. I think he's the green dot, right? He's the communicator on that defense, the leader of that defense. So I think he'll have a big game.
Yeah, I like that pick. By the way, our defensive player of the game predictions brought to you by our friends at Kenfield Golf Cars. If you're back in Austin and you're in the market for a newer pre-owned golf cart, reach out to our friends at Kenfield Golf Cars. They were founded back in 1979, and they've got an unparalleled selection of different golf carts available in new or used. They want to turn your golf cart ideas into reality. No job too big, no job too small. Go to their website, KenfieldGolfCars.com. That's KenfieldGolfCars.com. Or you can give them a call, 512-258-8515. And want to, once again, give some love to our travel partners, McCall Custom Homes and Port O'Connor Premier Lodge, also Real Truck as well, all three of them allowing us to bring you live boots-on-the-ground coverage from here in Atlanta. A couple of live shows in the ATL leading up to the SEC championship game. None of it's possible without the tremendous support of our travel partners. And hopefully we got a few more travel partners for a few more trips coming up over these next couple of weeks. All right, guys, back into this game here.
Let me ask you this, BK, really quick. You mentioned the travel. Hypothetically, would you rather have the bye or would you rather have a home playoff game at DKR?
Bye, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Look, like a home playoff game at DKR would be a lot of fun. It'd be something that's never happened before in Austin. It's something that obviously has never happened anywhere in college football. But, man, you can lose a game that you play. Yeah. You can't lose a game that you don't play. So
I figured I knew what your answer was going to be, but, it's a home playoff game's enticing.
Well, there's this argument out there that the 5 seed, and we can talk about this. We can talk about some of the other games in college football and just kind of the state of the CFP and the 12-team bracket. There's an argument out there that the 5 seed is the best place to be because you get the weakest champion, you get them at home, then you get to go up against the 4 seed who's probably going to be Boise State after what they did last night. So, and that's a neutral site game where you play Boise State. So, man, I don't know. Like, to me, it's easy. You want the bye. You want to be the SEC champ. But, Chip, what about you, man? Your thoughts on, like, the argument that maybe being the 5 seed is better than being the 1 or the 2?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the mindset of this Texas football team is all systems go today. I mean, Sark, he doesn't have to sell this team on the importance of being a conference champion and winning the SEC, which is hard to do. I mean, Kirby's been in this game 7 times and he's won it twice. It's crazy that Nick Saban was in this game 12 times and won it 11.
Golly.
Which is just
Kirby's got Nick to thank for all those, a lot of those losses.
Yeah. So, look, if Texas ends up as the 5 seed, that's a positive. Sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it'll be interesting to see if the committee moves teams around, because are they really going to have, if Georgia wins, are they just going to have Texas and Georgia flip? I don't think so.
Right.
So, let's see what, what comes out of this Tuesday night. But if Texas, were to lose this game today and ends up as the 5 seed, it would be par for the course. I mean, a lot of times the way this season has unfolded, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, getting the Yale walk-on quarterback against Florida, one week after DJ Lagway is leading, Florida so well against Georgia. And then the next week he beats Ole Miss, DJ Lagway, and Texas gets that one window where it's the Yale, walk-on. So that would be par for the course if Texas ended up as the 5 seed.
Yeah.
But
I wonder what's going to happen because you got Notre Dame sitting in that spot right now. They obviously can't be a top 4 seed because they're too scared to join a conference. So what happens there, right? Like does Texas or Georgia, the loser of this game, or like if Oregon loses to Penn State in the Big Ten title game tonight, does Notre Dame get to stay at 5, or do they get punished for not playing today and maybe they move down a slot or 2?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, if Penn State wins today and the Horns win, then I think the Horns should be the number 1 overall seed. But we'll see how that goes to what Chip is saying. I really don't mind both. I'll take the bye. If they went to lose this game, you get that 5 seed. DKR will definitely be rocking. That'd be an atmosphere that obviously we've never seen before. So I think this Texas team, they can play with anybody in the country. It's just a matter of the game plan and bringing it. But, yeah, I think with this Horns team, it doesn't matter. They'll play whoever and get down with whoever.
I think as Chip was saying too, though, about the motivation factor, I think that's something that we've seen some folks outside of the SEC footprint trying to insinuate this game has less meaning or less juice, or it doesn't. Both teams are going to be in. By the way, Georgia fans are on edge because of what happened last year. They've got PTSD of their own. They feel like they need to win to lock up their spot to be in because of last year. Lost to Bama in the SEC title. They were on the outside looking in. Different dynamic with 12 teams. But that's how they're feeling today. So I can tell you this. Everybody that's saying that thinks that it's a dumb, silly, made-up narrative. This game today means everything to these two teams. You don't get to this spot by being anything other than full speed ahead, full go. That's how they're approaching this week. Again, for the Georgia side of things, this game means a lot to Kirby Smart. He grew up in the SEC footprint. He played at Georgia. This game means everything to him. And again, Georgia fans, I think they feel like, let's not leave it in anybody's hands. We control our destiny. And then obviously for Texas, it kind of goes without saying, right? Your first year in the league, you can come in, kick the door down. We had our bad decade. We're back.
Don't
Are we
say
back?
that. Don't say
They've been
that.
back.
well, I thought,
you can at least feel that way. You win the SEC title.
Been
You know,
back.
I did think it was funny.
We're here. We're here.
There we go. I like that better.
The
I like that better.
coaches did a show with Laura Rutledge yesterday, and Kirby sits down next to Sark and he says, "This seat is earned. This is the hardest path we've ever traveled to get to this game." And the look on Sark's face was kind of priceless because there's no doubt Georgia, my God, at Ole Miss, at Texas,
Alabama.
at Alabama, home against Tennessee,
Georgia Tech, UMass.
Georgia Tech, UMass.
Tough game.
So, but guess what? If Texas handles business today, everything is a moot point because you will have beaten the team of, the dominant team. What did Sark call them Monday? They've been the torch carrier program in college football for the last 7-8 years. And these were the two teams who were picked to be in this game at media days.
You're right.
Back in July. So it all comes down to this. And let's see if these Longhorns learned anything from that first game.
Chip, we know you got to go in a couple minutes. So one question for you before we get your score prediction. I think we all agree Texas has to get off to a better start today. It was 23-0 in the first matchup at halftime. It goes without saying that they need to get off to a better start. How do they get off to a better start? What does Texas have to do differently in the first half? Because they've been very good in most first halves this year. They've been playing with the lead in most of their regular season games. Not the case against Georgia. How do they do that today?
Don't throw a screen pass.
No screen passes.
Not in
We're
the
talking
first,
about screen
in the first
Sarkisian
series.
here.
No, in the first series, don't do it.
Okay.
Mix up your tendencies and establish the run from the beginning. Be stubborn about it, because a lot of times Sark will come out and he'll want to get Quinn loosened up. I thought it cost them dearly in the Sugar Bowl against Washington last year. The running game was there. They were averaging 12.5 yards a carry in the first quarter, but Sark got away from it. To Chris's point, sometimes he maybe sticks with the script when it's obvious, oh, man, let's just keep running that play like Spurrier. I'm going to run it 6 times in a row. You prove to me you can stop it, and I'll stop running it, especially in the run game. That's the key. Establish the run early. Don't go to your tendencies at all in the first series. Don't make the big mistake right away. Get that running game going. And then, let's see, he'll be in his bag. He'll have a trick play or two. We saw in this game a year ago in the Big 12 Championship, the double pass to Jatavian Sanders for the touchdown.
Yeah.
And he was kind of alluding to that on Monday, that he'll have some new wrinkles.
Wrinkles.
Yeah.
That was the word he used, right? He was asked about Arch Manning potentially being a part of the offense again, and he kind of laughed and said maybe.
I think we see Arch throw it today in the red zone. I don't see him between the 20s, but in the red zone, I'd like to see them roll him, waggle, bootleg, get him where it's a true run pass option. He's a big guy. If the run lane is there, take it.
Yeah, I like that. You got to go?
Yeah, I got to go.
Okay, well, give us your score prediction then before you get out of here.
Yeah, I think it's Texas 23-17.
Okay.
And I think, it's a close game all the way. And then, a couple of Bert Auburn field goals late.
Oh, boy. You had me until that.
Oh, my God.
Come on.
Man.
They better be inside of 40 yards if you're predicting them to go
I
in.
say 35, man. That dude.
Well, I'll leave on that note because I know Zay's got some Bert Auburn roasting to do.
I'll let him live for a little while.
Let Carrot Top do his thing. Just saying.
He was sideshow Bert last year. He's been shit show Bert.
Oh,
it's been a disaster. Scholarship
Take
Bert
the
Auburn.
scholarship.
I know.
just keep him off the right hash.
Yeah. Okay. Keep him off the right hash. Enjoy the game, Chip.
Hey,
Good man, Chip.
y'all are the best.
All right, there he goes. Chip Brown
My
making
man.
his way to the press box. He will be at Mercedes-Benz. We all will be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Of course, 3 hours away from kickoff. It's finally here, and Selection Sunday gets here tomorrow. So what we've been waiting for all season long as football fans, the weekend has arrived. Obviously, so much at stake around the country. You've got the Big 12 championship game going on. That's a play-in game for a spot. The Big 12 is only going to get one team in the field this year, but you've got some big games around the country with the other 3 Power 4 championships coming a little bit later today. And, of course, the SEC gets the standalone afternoon slot, 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central Time. By the way, want to give some love to our guy, Dr. Danny at Texas Orthopedics. They're the best. If you've got pain and you don't want the pain anymore, reach out to Texas Orthopedics. They offer surgical and non-surgical options to take care of you and make your pain a thing of the past. Our guy, Dr. Danny, has given us a couple of tickets to give away. So if you are in Atlanta, you do not have tickets to the SEC championship game, come by Dare Biergarten, less than a mile away from Mercedes-Benz. Come say hello, and we might have a pair of tickets to give you people. I got a hunch most everybody already has tickets.
Only Texas fans. Let's keep it 100.
Only Texas
fans. If you come around here, you got some Bulldogs shit on, and you ain't sitting by us.
I'm not trying to sit next to any grown men barking like dogs. No,
Yeah,
I don't like that. It's a weird bit, Georgia. Don't be doing that shit. Don't be walking around with dudes on leashes. That's not normal, okay? There's being a fan, and then there's being weird. Georgia fans are weird. Now, Texas just played A&M. Talk about weird. You need a stronger word than that to describe the cult that is Texas A&M. But we're not sitting next to anybody barking like dogs. We want to sit next to people who are willing to throw water bottles on the field if things aren't going right.
That's right.
That's what we're looking for today. So if you are in the area and you do not have a ticket to the game, come by and see us. We normally do text giveaways. We normally do YouTube giveaways. You have to be here. Come say hello. It's not a far trek. Once again, a great place to hang out, get some food, get some beer, get some drinks, and get ready for the game with us. But, yeah, thanks to Dr. Danny and the team at Texas Orthopedics for giving us some tickets to give away to our great Texas Sports Unfiltered audience. And, of course, if you don't have the Texas Sports Unfiltered app, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please check us out. We're bringing you nonstop Texas coverage 24/7, 365. Special thanks to Texas Orthopedics for that one. Guys, the Texas defense. Chris, I want to get your non-biased thoughts on this Texas defense. Let me just give you some numbers here for what this group has been able to do this season. Number 2 in the country in scoring defense. Number 2 in the country in total defense. Number 1 in the nation in yards per play allowed. Number 1 in the nation in explosive plays allowed. They've been dominant in the first half, giving up just 5.2 points per game in the first halves of games. 10 of the 12 teams Texas played in the regular season had 7 or fewer points at halftime. Now, Georgia's one of the 2 because they had 23. Most of that was because the Texas offense kept turning it over. But this Texas defense, the eye test tells you that. The stats tell you that. You've gotten to see this group in person a few times this year. Tell us your thoughts about this Texas defense and just how good you think they can be today, but how good they can also be in a potential playoff run for the Horns.
Yeah, I mean, they're elite, championship level. I mean, it's really, truly, it's one of the best in the country. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, I've seen them 3 times this season at Vanderbilt against Kentucky and then last week against Texas A&M. So this will be my 4th time getting a look. And, I mean, you know, they're every bit a elite SEC group. You know, they're big, they're fast, they're physical, they're – you know, they play with an intensity that you have to have, an edge, if you will. We talked about Anthill earlier. I think Texas did a really good job from a personnel standpoint, going out in the portal, getting a guy like a Makuba who's made a huge difference this year. So, you know, really all 3 levels, you know, it's like let's play a game called Find the Weakness, and it's just hard to find one, really, truly. I mean, I think maybe if you're going to win battles against this Texas defense, number one, kind of like we've been talking about, you're going to have to find the way to generate some sort of running game and, you know, maybe take your shots downfield. But, I mean, everything against this Texas group is so much easier said than done. I mean, I really think they're elite at all 3 levels. So that's been the thing that sort of, you know, has steadied the ship and carried them throughout the year, even when you've had some inconsistencies with Quinn or the offense has kind of sputtered here and there. It's been that defense time and time again. I mean, every game at the defense, you look at some of the games, every game that it's been a higher scoring total for the opponent, it was because the offense put the defense in a bad spot most of the time. You know, and so I think that's what's interesting about this game too, is we've been talking about, you know, if you're Sark, you have to stay really stingy with the running game. If you're Georgia, you got to find the balance. At the same time, though, we mentioned those 4 or 5 plays that are going to decide the football game. It might be 4 or 5 explosives, because I don't think either one of these defenses, but especially the Texas defense, you're probably not going 10, 12 plays down the field and marching down the field and score. So you're probably going to have to hit some big shots. Yeah. You're going to have to try to take the top off. You're going to have to try to hit those explosives. And the same thing can be said for Texas. So it's like, as stingy as you got to stay, I think both defenses, you realize, man, we're going to have a really tough time living and dying by 6 or 7 minute, 10, 12 play drives. And then, again, when you get towards end of game, if you're trying to ice it for either side, that'll be your game plan. But, I mean, again, back to the Texas defense, they're elite, man. One of the best in the country. It's for real. I don't care who the competition is, schedule. This defense is elite at all 3 levels.
Oh, kind of following up on that, you know, I think everybody tuned in right now watched the Georgia-Texas game, so they know what happened. If you didn't watch and you saw that Georgia put up 30 points, you're like, well, their offense must have had a great day, and Texas defense must have really struggled. Here are the scoring drives for Georgia. 13 yards, 13 yards, 34 yards, 25 yards, 4 yards, 89 yards. So they had one drive. It was huge. It was when the game was 23-15, right? Texas had fought back to make it interesting again, and then Georgia converted a huge 3rd and 10 and ended up turning that into a long touchdown drive. But the Bulldogs had one drive that went for more than 35 yards. So, Zay, in the first game, they didn't have to do that kind of stuff. There really hasn't been any team that's been able to have those 8, 9, 10-play methodical drives consistently against this Texas defense. It feels like if the Longhorns can play a better version of complementary football this time around, there's a really good chance that they're hoisting a trophy today.
Yeah, and if you're Mike Bobo, offensive coordinator for the Bulldogs, that kind of worries you a little bit because Yeah, they had that big-time 3rd and 8 on that long drive. They converted that. Then they had to throw a flea flicker reverse out there to get those yards. And Baron Sorrell had a huge face mask call to keep the chains moving. And ETN put it in on that 4th down. But, yeah, they weren't moving the ball at a consistent rate only because they got good field position. This Texas defense, they're so deep at every spot. You got guys like Kenny Baker getting this interior right. You got guys like Pete Mikowski, Johnny Nance, and Terry Joseph, Blake Gideon. All of these coaches have been terrific at pressing the right buttons for their position groups, and the complementary football all around has been absolutely dynamic. So when you got guys like Ant Hill with that toughness, and Leoga Lafau has came along, and Trey Moore, he got off to a slow start, but as of late, that dude's been looking like that big-time player that we thought he was going to be coming from UTSA. And then you add one of the best secondaries in the nation of Mookie Taft Makuba, and I think the Jim Thorpe Award winner and Jahdae Barron. That's why they've had the success that they've had. So, yeah, they got a chip on their shoulder, too, coming into the bins today, and I think they're going to perform like they've been doing all year long.
Yeah, had a chance to talk to Ethan Burke earlier this week, and he echoed that same sentiment, right? Like there is a little chip on the shoulder, a little bit of extra motivation. There's enough at play in this game regardless of opponent, but because it's going up against the team that embarrassed you on your home turf, right? Like nobody likes losing. You really don't like to lose on your home turf. And for Texas to get the chance to avenge that in the state of Georgia, I think is something all of these players have been looking forward to. And I know there were some Texas fans, you know, because for a while, with like 2 or 3 weeks left in the season, it was looking like Texas, Alabama. Those were the 2 favorites. And then Alabama somehow lost to OU. Who would lose to OU this year?
That was that Sooner magic Cole was talking about.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm glad Bucky's not here to bring up his definition of Sooner magic. It's not quite PG, if you will.
Yeah,
but
Sooner tragic in Dallas when Texas played them. But somehow, some way, Oklahoma got the chance and they beat Alabama. And there are a lot of Texas fans who are like, "Oh, I'd rather see Alabama." Right? We beat them last year. We know we could contain Jalen Milroe. I don't think the players are thinking like that. I think the players are like, "Oh, thank God it's Georgia." Like this season wouldn't have felt complete. Winning an SEC title wouldn't have felt complete if we didn't get the chance to do it against the one team that got us.
You talk about the chip on the shoulder, man. I mean, outside of the first matchup and you got embarrassed on your home field, I mean, this is kind of like coming into a road game.
It is.
I'm literally walking around the convention center over there, and people that are on staff are like, "Go Dogs." And I'm like, "You're working." Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, even I'm driving into Atlanta. I see a billboard. It's like a Dunkin' billboard. It says, it's got a coffee and it says, "Sip 'em, sick 'em." It's like, dude, we are in Georgia country.
Yep.
Like, there's no misconception who the home team is.
Seeing Carson Beck's ugly ass mug all over this.
Ugly ass mug.
My God, that guy's not good looking enough to be on billboards. Come on.
Hey, he's
Listen,
with a Cavender twin. The dude's doing
he does,
something.
but he does have butthole eyes.
Can she
We can
be
admit
at this
that.
game?
He's got butthole eyes.
By the way, can she be at this game? Because she's
Cavender?
a distraction.
I'm sure she is. Yeah, I mean,
I know she's playing.
some people
like,
say there's a Cavender curse.
That's what I'm saying. She's a distraction. Let her walk in the building.
This reminds me of like, what was it, Jessica Simpson and Tony Romo back in the day?
It's there.
Come on. I was having a good day. Why are you bringing up Tony Romo and Jessica Simpson?
The thing is undefeated, especially a Jessica Simpson and Cavender twin. Come on now.
Thang be thangin'.
Hey, we got a couple of extra tickets. Whichever Cavender Carson is dating. If you want to sit with us,
We'll give
we
it to
got
them.
you. Yep.
They could be the
Where
Georgia
where
fans
y'all
that
at?
we give
Where
it
y'all
to.
at the stadium?
Upgraded behind the end zone. I don't know which end zone.
Dude,
it is.
you might be. I'm 136.
Okay, we're
So
one.
I'm behind a goalpost as well.
Okay, yeah, we're tearing them down if we win this game today.
All right.
No,
fair
we're
enough.
not doing
All
that.
right.
We don't.
Hey,
rush the
I'm down to
field.
rush another field.
We don't rush the field. Oklahoma does that stuff apparently, but Texas,
We're too big for that.
even when we're bad, and we've been bad a lot over the last decade and change, we don't rush.
I loved the crap Oklahoma got for rushing the field. Even their own fans were upset. I'm like, y'all are awful and just beat Alabama. Like, let them have some fun.
Yeah,
Let them have some fun.
it was weird to me. I didn't expect to ever see the day where OU fans will rush the field, but I'm happy they're so bad that they felt like they had to do it.
Again,
as someone who's rushed the field 4 times this year, I can tell you it's a blast. So we should make that a normal thing.
Yeah, never done it. Never gotten to rush a field. Never gotten to storm a court in my life. So
Not even storm a court.
Not even storm a
Wow.
court, man. I
Come
know.
on, Rodney.
I know.
Let's go, RT.
Now, storming the court at UT, that's still a little
A little more
Oh,
acceptable.
come on.
A little more acceptable.
but it's a lot. Come on, man. We got a standard.
You beat the number 1 team in the country. You're not going to rush the court.
we got to be really bad. Really, really
come
bad.
on.
Yeah.
But the field, storming the field, that's a no-no. Absolutely.
By the way, Texas
right, fair
basketball plays UConn tomorrow. Now, UConn has already lost 3 games this year, so they're not number 1 in the country, but big weekend for the University of Texas
That's at the
athletics
Mood?
program. At the Mood.
At the Mood.
Yeah, you got Texas volleyball
Ooh.
playing in the NCAA tournament. You got Texas men's basketball hosting the back-to-back defending champs tomorrow. And obviously today, Texas football playing a team that's won 2 of the last 3 national championships in football. So a lot going on the 40 acres right now.
Let me ask you this about this game today. In the first matchup, we saw Sark with the quick trigger go to Arch Manning. Is there any chance that he learned from that decision? Would they do that again? Is there any way that you would see? Because that felt very kind of off the wall. And then at that point, I mean, I really commend everybody for not letting that thing. You know, it could have spun sort of out of control with now the toothpaste is out of the tube. Quinn came in, let the quarterback controversy begin. This is Quinn's team. There's no doubt, no denying that. I like the way they've used him the last few weeks. But I'm just curious. That's kind of an interesting dynamic from that first game that we haven't talked about a lot, the way he just sort of, inserted it. Did you feel like it was a panic move?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, look, Texas was down a lot. It was 20-0 at the time.
Yeah.
And I think Steve Sarkisian is going to do whatever he has to do to win this game today. I think, like, Quinn Ewers has been up and down all season. There were a lot of Texas fans who were like, oh, we got to take him out against Kentucky. And in Sark's mind, it's, well, Texas, that was a double-digit game throughout. You're not going to make a change at quarterback just because your quarterback is struggling if you're not in jeopardy of losing the game. The only game that Texas has really been in jeopardy of losing this year was the game that they lost. And Sark's like, if I don't do something, we might lose. So, Zay, I think that's the case today, right? If Quinn Ewers is awful, he gets off to a terrible start, or that ankle was clearly hampering him to the point where he's just not good enough, I don't think Sark's going to hesitate. Like, if he's worried about losing a game, he's going to do whatever he has to do to win. And if that means we see more Arch Manning today, I think we could happen.
Yeah, and that kind of scares you, especially with the national championship and all that still at stake. You definitely don't want a quarterback battle in the midst of all that. But Arch Manning's going to play today, whether it's Quinn Ewers being good or bad. Arch Manning's going to get some bump. We saw him this past Saturday at Kenfield, first touchdown of the game. You know, Chip talked about you only seeing Arch in the red zone possibly. I like to see Arch at different spots. I get him air it out. Expand that playbook, if you will. Like, this is Georgia. You throw the kitchen sink at Georgia.
And it's for a championship.
Exactly. It's for a championship.
Yep.
So if you got to do a little trickery, anything it takes, get the job done. If that means Arch Manning gets 5, 10, 15 snaps, 15's a lot, but hey, if you feel the flow of the game, and we know Georgia has struggled with quarterbacks that are fleet of foot, quarterbacks that can put the ball down and run and get those yardage. Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, my man from Georgia Tech, Haynes King, put up a lot of yards on them. So they're vulnerable when it comes to a running quarterback. Let Arch get in there, get his feet wet a little bit, and see if you could set Georgia back a little bit on what you throw at them.
That's a compelling storyline without a doubt. By the way, we've got a few more sponsor shout-outs to give. Our scoreboard updates during our Texas Sports Unfiltered pregame shows are brought to you by our friends at Moonshine Patio Bar and Grill. If you're back in Austin, looking for a great spot for brunch tomorrow. Got that, celebrating an SEC championship with a nice weekend brunch at Moonshine Patio Bar and Grill. 2 locations, one right in the heart of downtown. They've been around for more than 20 years, serving up all of your favorite Southern comfort classics. We're talking down-home food with a Texas twist. If you've never been to Moonshine Patio Bar and Grill, you are missing out. We love it, and I'll be back there soon, but a great place to have dinner tonight after the game or to have weekend brunch there tomorrow. Scoreboard update, a couple games going on right now. One that people care about, Arizona State leading Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game at Jerry World, 17-10 the score. Got about 5 minutes left in the second quarter of that matchup. So it's been back and forth. Still plenty of game left, but right now it's the Sun Devils of ASU trying, with a lead, trying to win the Big 12 in their first year. For anybody who cares, the MAC championship, Ohio U leading Miami of Ohio. Although I'd pick Ohio U against Miami of Florida the way Miami's been playing. 14-3 the score of that one, late second quarter there. And guys, while we're doing these scoreboard updates, just quickly want to get your thoughts on the other games later today. We'll start with the ACC Championship, Clemson and SMU. Obviously a lot at stake in this matchup. I disagree with you, Chris, and with Chip. I think SMU is in the playoff regardless. I could be way off on that. I'm trusting the committee to stick to their word, which is probably the dumbest shit I've ever done in my entire life. But they've said all year long that if you're playing in a conference title game, you are not going to get punished when compared to a team not playing in a conference championship game. So we'll see if I'm right about that. But I think if SMU wins, the ACC's a one big bid league. I think if Clemson wins, both of those teams are getting in. Who do you like?
They said that, but they also said that, well, we're going to evaluate all of these teams through championship weekend, which, again, is why Georgia fans are so nervous because, what if Texas does to Georgia what Georgia did to them? And it's like, well, Georgia is at 7. We could bump them down, So they're again, you talk about PTSD. They got plenty of it.
Sure.
I can't trust Clemson, man. Every good team they played, they look like absolute shit against. So I'm going. And also, too, it's no secret. I can't stand Clemson. I hate them very much. So give me SMU. I got money on -2.5. I'm riding the ponies. Let's go, ponies. Come on, baby. Let's go. Come on.
Pony
the
up.
Boys from Dallas. Let's go, man.
The boys from Dallas.
Hey, listen, all Texas brethren stick together. Right?
There you go.
Unless you're an Aggie.
Unless you're an Aggie. Yeah. We don't like to claim them.
We had some Texas fans comment on the feed this week that they were like, yeah, if they're not playing Texas, I pull for SMU. So I was like, all right, sticking together. No, I'm going SMU, though. But to your point, man, the committee, yeah, that's a fool's errand putting any stock in anything they say. And here's the thing. Ward Manuel was asked, if SMU loses to Clemson, will SMU or could SMU fall below Bama? His answer, potentially yes. I was like, you just left the door open.
Yeah.
You left it open. So if they lose on a last-second field goal, if they lose by 7, it will be fascinating to see what happens. They lose by double digits, Bama's in.
Zay, what say you, first of all, about this game and then about that conversation?
Yeah, I think SMU could get really hosed in this situation, even if, when they win, obviously they're in, but if they lose, I could see them getting their way out. Their schedule isn't the hardest in the ACC. They avoided Clemson up to this point. They avoided Miami. Besides that, you got Mac Brown getting fired and, Louisville and stuff. Like, the teams just aren't that good in the ACC. So I could definitely only see one team getting in if Clemson comes through today. And, yeah, that sucks. I feel bad for my homie Chip, SMU alum, if that were to happen. But even though they're playing with the big dogs now, being in the Power 4, they still, to some people, aren't big dog yet.
Yeah.
So they got to win today to make themselves completely good in the CFP. Obviously, if they do that, hey, they're fine.
Yeah, the NCAA, they hate SMU more than anybody else. SMU has gotten punished more for stuff that everybody else has done than.
Yeah, you're seeing all these, $1 million quarterback deals, and I'm sure the old heads from SMU are just like, we were just ahead of the time.
Ridiculous. What about the Big Ten title game, guys? We've got a theme today, right? You've got 4 Power 4 conference championships. You've got a newcomer going up against a team that's been around the block. That's obviously the case in the Big Ten title game. Oregon, the newcomer, the number 1 team in the country, the only undefeated team in the country, taking on Penn State. Well, we'll kind of feel like a road game. It's in Indianapolis. Penn State's got more alumni than Oregon, and they're a hell of a lot closer to Indy than Oregon is. Oregon, a 3.5-point favorite. Zay, I'll give you the honor first. Does Oregon stay unbeaten, or can James Franklin finally beat a top 5 team?
Man, Dan Lanny's done a terrific job this season with the Ducks, their first year in the Big Ten. They've handled their business. They've won ugly. They've won big at times, but they are vulnerable. And Drew Aller, man, if he could play big, which I know that's saying a lot, if he could play big and make this thing interesting and don't allow Dylan Gabriel or the Ducks to get off to an early lead, then I could see them dethroning the Ducks today for the Big Ten championship. The problem is I never trusted James Franklin.
Right.
Still don't. You can't trust that guy. I just never performed in the big game, and why start now? I thought their schedule's been light besides Ohio State, so you got to show me. You got to prove it to me for me to believe in you. I can't do it. I'm going with the Ducks today.
TP?
This screams James Franklin faltering in a big game.
Yeah, it does.
Listen, the playoff was made for James Franklin, a guy who goes 10-2 every year and can never beat a Michigan or Ohio State and get in the top 4. Now we got 12, so Penn State's probably going to be in more often than not, and it turns James Franklin into a college football playoff head coach now. He can add that to his resume.
Yep.
I like the Ducks here, though. Like Zay mentioned, Dan Lanning, Dylan Gabriel, what they've done this year, I think they'll cap off the perfect season to this point, State claimed that number 1 seed and take down Penn State.
Here are the numbers. James Franklin 1-13 straight up in his career against top 5 teams.
You'd be crazy to pick him to win this game, honestly. Like at this point, you show me. You got to show me.
Yeah, show me.
He's also 0-9 straight up and just 2-7 against the spread as an underdog. So in this spot,
they lose, and they lose with style.
Yeah, they should put Keegan-Michael Key out there to coach instead. I think they'd have a better chance in this game tonight than
he's
they
a
do
great
with Franklin.
doppelganger,
Oh,
man.
man.
That's
He's
just
perfect.
You don't get much better than that.
Yeah, like that's the ideal doppelganger to have too. Like, he's hilarious. So I'm going with Oregon as well in this game for all the reasons you just mentioned. We'll see if Dan Lanning's up for it though, because he's done a great job this season. But in a very similar situation last year, he lost in a conference championship game as a favorite against Washington. Now, last year that kept Oregon out. Not going to be the case this year. Oregon's in regardless, but we'll see if Dan Lanning can win his first conference championship as a head coach in his coaching career. That'll be a fun one. Both of those games tonight, by the way, the ACC and Big Ten championships, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock back home time. A couple more sponsor shout-outs here. I want to give some love to Hat Creek Burger Company. More than 25 locations across the great state of Texas. Started as a food truck behind Star Bar on West 6th Street. Now they've grown like crazy, and they're all over the Lone Star State. If you haven't been to a Hat Creek Burger Company, you are missing out. Get their world-famous burgers, fries, shakes. They've got the nuggets. They've got breakfast at some of their locations as well. It is Hat Creek Burger Company, and also Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. If you've got something you need to get done. You know, after today, we got a little lull of college football action. So if you've been putting a bunch of stuff off because you don't want to sacrifice your Saturdays, maybe next weekend, the time to get some things done. Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. They have the biggest selection of tools and supplies that you need, from small home projects to large construction jobs. They've got all the biggest brands. They're Austin's #1 source for all of that stuff, and they've been that way since 1996. TopGun.net is the website. It is Top Gun. We will shoot you straight. Got about 5 minutes left in our pregame show. Special thanks to the folks at Dare Biergarten. This has been a lot of fun. Great turnout here. Thanks to everybody who came by to see us. Thanks to everybody who came by and are pissed off that we're here. It doesn't matter. We appreciate you being here today. And if you're a Texas fan looking for a place to pregame, still 2.5 hours till kickoff. We'll be hanging here for a little bit. So come have some drinks with us. Talk some Texas, Georgia.
Just like Texas folks coming in thinking it's all theirs. Every world revolves around Texas, right?
We're entitled.
Hey, we showed out, though. Are you impressed, CP?
Yeah.
You showed out. Look around.
I know. I see it. Listen, I was walking around earlier, man. There's plenty of Texas folks out and about. I love to see it, man. Like I told you, I had a blast in Austin, man. Got to a point where I was like, I can see myself posting up here.
Yeah.
I saw some of
I almost didn't come back, to be honest with you.
I saw some of those 2 a.m. tweets after 6th Street.
Dude, I mean, 6th Street, listen, 6th Street might be popping tonight, depending on what happens.
Yeah,
so, it's the celebration to be on. Pop the bottles and get after it. So you can catch the flight tonight, make it back if you want to.
Nah, we're driving, baby.
Baby.
Come on, 14-hour drive. It's going to be a miserable drive if Texas loses. If Texas wins, the 14 hours is going to fly by. Yeah. Texas loses, tomorrow's going to be one of the worst days of my life. I'll just go ahead and say that right now. Because on the way here, we split it up into 2 days, right? We did New Orleans on Thursday and then came to Atlanta yesterday. We're trying to a straight shot at tomorrow and celebrating a win. It's all good. Mourning a loss.
Well, you split up the drive. Split up the drive a little bit, right?
Yeah,
not too bad.
Yeah, Brock.
Maybe,
can we do that?
Maybe
can
intern
the
Brock,
drive a little bit,
who got a nice 6-hour snooze after sleeping 1 hour after a night on Bourbon Street Thursday. He's got to do a run of the driving tomorrow. So it's been a lot of fun. Atlanta's great. We obviously hope to be here in a month and change with the national championship being here. Hell, there's a chance really for Georgia and Texas. They're here 2 more times this season because one of the quarterfinal games is the Peach Bowl at Mercedes, and obviously the national title game on 120 will be played here as well. So Texas fans, Georgia fans live
and
here.
this is the first time Texas has ever been to the Benz, right? They've never played in this venue.
Yeah, never played in this
venue.
venue.
Georgia, this is like home away from
I know,
home
that's
for the
the
Dogs.
scary part.
I feel like Georgia's kind of got Mercedes-Benz fatigue a little bit. Now they're going to start playing Georgia Tech at the Benz.
Is that
in
happening?
the rivalry game? Yes.
Wow.
I think at least I don't know if it's somebody could tell me is it every year or just the games that were supposed to be in Atlanta, but
Georgia Tech's losing the home game?
Well, I think Tech took the bag. I think listen,
Okay.
we're in the day of the bag, right? If we're Georgia Tech, you take the bag. So, and also too, I mean, Georgia would just come in and take over Bobby Dodd.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any Tech fans roaming around out here. They don't care I'm saying this. They would agree with me. Yeah, they'd take over Bobby Dodd. And so I think they're probably pretty happy about the decision, to be honest with you. So
that's interesting. That is interesting.
Well, I mean, look at the rivalry and look at the record.
I'll say this.
Tell me.
I'm glad Georgia won that game last week. Now, there's a lot of Georgia fans here, and I don't want them to kick my ass, so that's part of the reason why I'm saying that. But think about how angry and hungry this Georgia team would be if they had to win this game. Now, they're not taking this lightly.
You sound like me justifying why I thought A&M was a good pick. So it doesn't always work that way.
Texas wouldn't have made the SEC title game, though, if they lost last week.
Fair enough.
Like, Georgia's going to be in the playoff regardless. Look, I don't think Kirby Smart's saying it doesn't matter. We don't need to try in this game.
I don't think either side.
But I just like a more desperate
they would have,
Georgia team.
it would have been win or go home for them had they lost last week.
I picked Georgia. We got a couple minutes left, so we'll do our game score predictions brought to you by Paul's Motorworks right now. I picked Georgia the first time around. I was the only guy on TSU. I was incredibly confident that Georgia was going to win that game, too. I didn't think it'd look as bad as it looked for Texas, but I was like, one-loss Georgia team, unbeaten Texas team. Kirby Smart loves being an underdog. He's going to have his guys desperate to avoid that second loss, and I just like Georgia in that spot. I'm picking Texas today. I'll give my score in a moment. If Georgia had lost to Georgia Tech, whether it was 1 overtime, 5 overtimes, 8-30, didn't matter, I'd be picking Georgia to win this game. So that to me, as crazy as it sounds, because once again, you've got a championship on the line. That's the difference in my pick today. Georgia won't be as desperate as they would have been if they slipped up against the Ramblin' Wreck last week.
Yeah, I'm going with the Horns, 24-21. I think that Georgia, they're mentally and physically fatigued by having the toughest schedule in all of college football. I mean, you struggle with Kentucky. You beat Clemson early on, even though that was an absolute rout. It's still Clemson. You play Texas, and play Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss, 8 overtime with Georgia Tech. They got to be feeling it. They got to be feeling it at this point. While Texas, with the lighter schedule, the last 5 games after Georgia, they've been thriving and only getting better. So I think that's going to play a little bit to their advantage. I know Georgia had an extra day to get right and, get the body right playing last Friday, but I still think that it's going to be a lot wear and tear wise on the Bulldogs to where the Horns get the advantage. That's why I'm going with the Horns, 24-21.
CP, I think we know who you're picking, but give us a score and give us your reasoning.
Yeah, I wanted to say I had a great time in Austin a few weeks ago. For those that don't know, I was in town for the Kentucky game, got in town Thursday. Thursday night, I went to East 6th. Friday night, I went to West 6th. Saturday, I went to a combination of Dirty and West. There was a football game mixed in there as well. Had a great time. Hospitality was unlike anything I felt in the entire tour. This is 15 straight weeks now on the road at a football game. Got nothing but love for Texas, folks. But I'm picking Georgia. I'm going with Kirby Smart and the Dogs. I'm going with the known commodity in this spot. I think Texas is a fantastic football team. They're a national championship caliber team. I think Georgia, though, again, it felt like the wrong pick to me the first time around, and we all went Texas, and I had people saying, what about Kirby Smart in that spot, like you were just mentioning? And it was like, well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you're not going to fool me again.
Yeah.
I'm going to roll with Kirby. I think Carson Beck, very underrated how much better he's been playing over the last few weeks. I think that momentum will help them a lot today offensively. Lower scoring game. I think its styles make fights, and I think it will be a back-and-forth defensive battle, but I'm going to go with Georgia to get it done today.
All right.
23-21.
23-21. Intern Brock is here. He's been passing out koozies, working hard over the last couple of hours. What's your prediction for today's game?
I'm going to go Texas 20, Georgia 16.
Okay.
I'm a lot more confident in the Texas defensive matchup versus the Georgia offense. I still think it's going to be low scoring, but I think we have the edge this time around.
I like it. I'm going to go 21-17 Texas. So right around there, Texas covers because the line's up to 3. So you can't pick a 3-point game. That's not fun. You got to pick one side or the other. I go 4 points. So we don't do pushes around here. But low scoring game. I trust the Texas defense. And I trust, the Texas offense is going to turn it over today. They are. Can it be 1? Please? Can it be 1? If it's 1, then Texas is going to win this game. If it's a crooked number, then Texas is in trouble. We saw that in the first matchup. I trust that Texas is going to do a better job protecting the football and not making those back-breaking mistakes that plagued them back in the October 19th matchup. So 3 of us going with Texas.
Yep.
1 of us going with Georgia. We're going to post all of our scores on the Texas Sports Unfiltered Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts before we wrap things up. But one more shout out to our travel partners here at McCall Custom Homes. If you're back in Central Texas and you're trying to upgrade your home, reach out to McCall Custom Homes. They've been a family-owned and operated business in Central Texas for more than 40 years. They started in Austin, they've stayed in Austin, and they want to turn your Central Texas home into something truly special. Whether it's a bathroom remodel, a new kitchen, a new outdoor space, just reach out to our buddy Mike, 512-633-9580, 512-633-9580, and he will hook you up. And then, of course, Port O'Connor Premier Lodge as well. If you want to catch some fish throughout these winter months, head down to Port O'Connor and check out our buddy Captain Rhino and the team at POC Premier Lodge. Weekend and week-long guided hunting and fishing tours. If you don't want to do all of that stuff, you don't want to buy the equipment, you don't know what you're doing, hang out with our buddy Captain Rhino, and he'll get you on fish, he'll get you on whatever you need, and he will take care of you down in beautiful Port O'Connor, Texas. POCPremierLodge.com is the website. Once again, POCPremierLodge.com, the website. Thanks to our travel partners, and a shout out to Paul's Motor Works as well, bringing you our game score predictions. Your search for a trusty car mechanic in the Austin area is over. Go see Paul and his team at 620 and 2222 to get your car taken care of. Gentlemen, we could talk about this game for hours, but I want to have a cold beer, so I think we're going to call it right here. Thank you guys for being a part of this. CP, thanks for stopping by our table.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always a pleasure. We enjoy doing, obviously, the SEC Unfiltered Hour, and get to sit down, chop it up, do this in person, man. It's always a blast. Chip, Zay, Rock, all you guys, man. It's a great time. So
yeah, been a lot of fun. And thanks again to Dare Biergarten for having us out. This place has been great. Yeah. They're still open. They're going to be open all night long. So if you want to watch some of the night games tonight, come by and see them. But, of course, if you're looking for a spot to pregame for Texas, Georgia, come grab some beers, come grab some drinks, come grab some food. They've got it all just 1 mile away from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's going to do it for us. For Brock Bollinger, for our man Adam Wagner running the app back home, for Chris Phillips, for Zay Collier, for Chip Brown, who was here earlier, for Eric Henry, who says he's not hungover.
Eric Henry, where you at, bro? Patrick Sidney got the best of them.
Texted us this morning.
Strip clubs get the best of them.
Lemon pepper
wings,
baby.
Hey, he went just
That's
for the wings.
Bad look.
Remember
the lemon pepper. Yeah.
I mean,
ATL got a hold of him.
He said he was under the weather this morning. That was his text at
I
about 9
ain't trying to hear
a.m.
that.
And I called him out. I'm like, all right, dude, don't love that you're too hungover for this. And he's like, I promise it's not a hangover. I promise it's not a hangover.
We had a liquid IV ready for him. Come on, man.
I'm telling you. But we love you, Henry. Big part of what we do on TSU. But had to give him some shit for being under the weather in Atlanta when he was talking about going to Magic City all day long yesterday.
Can't do both.
The math ain't mathing, as the kids say. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to everybody for coming out and supporting Texas Sports Unfiltered. Our post-game show right after the game goes final, so keep it locked in. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the weekend. And hook 'em.
Good stuff, man.